of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. Thank you all for coming. We're going to start the meeting with a poll hearing on Coleman Road and Gunn Road. We're having a public hearing pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 166, Section 22, for a joint petition of Western Mass Electric Company and Verizon New England requesting permission to locate a line of poles, wires, cables, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures at the following public ways: Coleman Road, relocated existing utility pole labeled L6/1, approximately 18 feet northerly of the existing location on Coleman Road. And Gunn Road, new poles are needed to facilitate a reconductor project with WMECO. Please note for the record that the hearing was posted in Town Hall on February 25th, 2015, and was advertised in the local newspaper on March 10th and March 24th. All abutters were notified by certified return receipt mail. So we will first invite opening statements from Verizon, WMECO, now Eversource, and then questions or comments from the issuing authority and the general public will be accepted. Gentlemen? If you wouldn't mind, if you have to speak, to come to the podium so those at home can hear us also.
Good evening. My name's Jerry Mulangoski, and I'm with Eversource out of our East Springfield office. And we have submitted 2 petitions for 2 street locations in town. Which one would you like to start with?
How about we start with the one at Coleman Road, the pole labeled L6/1?
Okay, all right. This work is in association with a new circuit that we're running in the area from our Gunn substation on East Hampton, in East Hampton on the corner of Phelps and Line Street. And we did present to the board
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago to describe that project and the purpose. These poles are related to that. This petition for Coleman Road is at the junction or intersection of Gunn Road, and we have one pole currently closer to the intersection, and we're looking to relocate that existing pole northerly up Coleman Road about 18 feet. And the purpose of that is to respan the pole lengths and the span lengths going ahead up Coleman and also back to an associated new pole, which is listed on the second petition we've submitted for Gunn Road. There would be no guy on this particular one on Coleman Road. That would just be the pole relocated that distance. It would be a slightly higher pole than what's there, and there would be some trimming of the trees along the corner there, which I did discuss with Randall Kemp, and he didn't see any objections to that. It's kind of a blind corner when you come out there anyway. And the trees that we were looking to remove or trim had some health issues or were leaning badly to the road.
Okay.
As I say, the associated petition with this, this is actually the route that the new circuit would follow, originating again at that substation on the easterly side of Gunn Road. Currently, westerly of Pleasant Street, I wish I had something I could hold up for you, but I do not. But I could share this anyway that you see fit. But westerly of Pleasant Street, we currently have 3 existing pole locations before you get to Coleman Road. And those 3 poles, the existing poles, are spanned rather oddly. The first 2 are very close together, and then we have 2 very long spans. So the purpose of this petition is to even those spans out and also get them away from the trees that are located on the northerly side of Gun Road. With the new circuit and the higher poles, we would have to trim those trees considerably, plus the existing trees that would remain would pose a risk of future problems in storms. So the purpose is twofold here. One is to, as I say, respan the uneven span lengths, and the second is to get away from the trees. By doing what we're proposing, crisscrossing of the road, it keeps the wire over the center of the road and reduces the risk of tree problems. There are the junction pole, that is it's currently the wires go in 4 different directions. That is an existing pole shown on your sketch as L32-22, T18. That pole would just be replaced in very close to the current position. Then we're looking for a new pole on the southerly side of Gun Street, approximately 212 feet from that junction pole. Then we're looking to cross to an existing pole, which is indicated as T2, light L2, on the northerly side, which is another 200 feet ahead. Then we're looking to place a new pole opposite Coleman Road on the southerly side of Gun Road for the purpose of running the 3-phase line down Coleman Road, where we currently have the single phase. This is, again, the new circuit. The locations have been reviewed by Randall, and he did not have any concerns. Other than that, I checked with the water department to make sure there were no conflicts there. And I have not done that yet, but I have a call into the water department to look at those locations.
If you have a conflict, would you have to reopen the poll hearing? Would you have to move the poles off of this line here?
I guess that would depend on how close we were to the water department's facilities, and if we could adjust the pole without substantially changing the petition, and I would run that by Randall and the water department.
Less than 10 feet, would you say?
Yeah, I did see today, and it kind of surfaced out under the leaves there, at that intersection of Coleman and Gunn, that pole that we're looking for there was a water shut-off there, so I definitely need to get the water department's input as to which way that goes. Whether it conflicts with our pole location, I'm not quite certain yet.
I guess my question is regarding to having a poll hearing, whether or not, if we close the poll hearing tonight,
Right.
with these locations, and you have it pretty specific, 39 feet, 212 feet, it's pretty specific.
Right.
You know, do we have to have another poll hearing if you have to move it 5 feet either way?
I can comment on that. I've been through probably 100 poll hearings. They get they have a latitude 10 and 15 feet. If there's a problem, they need to, but if there's a problem, they need to work that out with the abutters.
Okay.
This hearing locates where the poles are going to be for the most part.
Right.
But if there's an adjustment that has to be made, I just hate to see a pole put in front of somebody's picture window.
Right.
You know, you need to talk to them.
Right.
Okay. But no, there wouldn't have to be another hearing.
All right, thank you.
John, do you have any questions for
No,
them?
no.
Do you have any more questions before I open it to the public or any abutters who may or may not have comments or questions? Is there any public who would like to speak to this, who may have concerns? Yes, ma'am, if you wouldn't mind coming to the podium and just letting us know your name and where you're from?
Yeah, I'm Brenda Rice and my brother. We're the ones who own the corner of Gun Road and
Okay.
Coleman Road.
Yep.
So we're really concerned is how much is going to be cut off? What are we going to be losing property? What's this going to do to our frontage? Because I own on Coleman Road and Gun Road both. So if they're talking about putting a pole and cutting that corner off, I'm gonna be losing frontage to my property on both roads. I don't understand, because this is the first, I wanna know, what am I losing out of this, or,
I don't think you're going to lose any.
No.
Right.
Can I explain something?
Thank you.
The town usually owns anywhere from 10 to 12 feet off the road
Right.
into the property.
yeah,
And for the most part, I believe these are going to be in that layout. The only thing that I would be concerned about property loss would be your trees and how much they need to trim back. Other than that, they'd be put on our town property.
Okay. So it wouldn't change my frontage, it wouldn't change
No, no,
anything?
no,
Just the cutoff on the corner?
right.
Well, it wouldn't, with no cutoff, it's just, you wouldn't, no land's changing, just the position of a pole.
Just the location of the pole. So if it's here, it would be here.
That's all.
Well, see, this is the thing, the pole wasn't, we went to check on the pole, there was no thing on, for what the pole said, the number. We could not find a pole with that number on it.
Could
I'm not sure exactly.
Could I ask you, ma'am, where you are here?
My-
This is yours, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
all of this and all of this, yeah.
Okay. I'd be glad to meet with you in the field also, just so you're sure. So basically, these heavy dark things are indicating the new pole locations. This is the pole that's right on the corner by the pines here,
Yeah,
right? And currently, the poles are along this side,
right.
and then they continue up, gone this way. So this pole, we're looking to move it ahead 18 feet in a straight line with the existing poles going this
Right.
way. Then we're looking to, then this petition shows us installing a new pole here, which is right here.
Okay, so it would go right across the
And
street.
it'll go straight, so the wire
Okay.
will not cut your property and will
Okay.
not be into your property at all.
All right.
There would be no guy wires on this pole. And what we'd be looking to do that would affect your frontage is trim these trees or remove the ones that the town feels that are bad.
All right, now that other pole, though, that I'm a little concerned about. Now,
Mm-hmm. Do you-
what is,
Is this your house here, the red house?
yeah,
Okay, so that pole would just be changed out in the same location.
okay, all right,
To a higher pole, because that is a very
okay.
old pole.
okay,
And, yeah, the location would change. It would set a pole adjacent to that one and remove the old.
oh, okay, because I wasn't sure if you were going to go kitty corner across the
No.
property,
No.
you know, to connect Coleman onto Gunn this way. That's what my concern was.
So currently, the wire goes from the pole that's to the right of your driveway
Mm-hmm.
and goes a very long span to the pole on the other side of Coleman.
Mm-hmm.
So that wire would end up coming, this direction. It would cross over to this location.
Right, so there's not going to be any
There
wire that
won't be
goes
any
this way?
wire across.
Okay,
So,
that's
because
what
the
I wanted
trees
to
are our
know.
problem. That trees are what takes us
Okay.
all the time.
All right.
So really, we're getting off your frontage here.
All
And
right.
here, we're just going straight. The only thing that we're asking you for is to trim these trees on the corner.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd be glad to come out and go over it.
Yeah,
location
I
by
don't have,
location.
no, I don't have a problem with that. I thought it was
Yeah.
going to come across kitty corner like this, and that I was going to lose,
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, if you trimmed off that whole
Mm-hmm.
thing, that I would be like,
I'll do-
I didn't know that it was going to come across the street, then go back across.
Mm-hmm.
So that's totally, yeah, I don't have
I'll
an
give
issue
you
with
my
that.
name and number, and I can meet you anytime.
Okay,
So
all
you
right.
know, and I can show you exactly.
Okay,
Okay.
all right,
So you
thank
feel more comfortable now after that conversation, ma'am?
Yeah, because
Okay,
I
good.
wasn't sure, you know,
Okay,
Yeah.
how
Very
it was
good.
going to run, but yeah, that's
very good.
not, shouldn't be an issue at all.
The gentleman in the green had a question. Did you have a question?
No, I'm fine. I just looked at the map. I'm across the street from these like Frank Hooks. So I don't have any problems with it. It's on a very far corner of my property.
Very
I'm
good.
all for progress.
Are there any other concerns from the public or butters concerning this poll situation? No. At this point, then I would accept a motion to grant the said petitions for the polls.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any other further discussion before this?
Yeah.
Oh, can I have a motion to vote to close the poll hearing?
So moved as we send the motion.
Second.
All right, first we have to rescind the first
So
motion.
rescind.
This is my first poll hearing, in case you didn't know, okay?
You're doing okay, kid.
Thanks. So we have a motion to rescind. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can I have a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And can I have a motion to grant the said petitions?
So moved.
Is there, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Whew. So, could I have the papers to sign? Oh, I have them, okay. There's 6 forms, 3 sets for each petition.
Now, what was the schedule on the work?
All the word needs to sign under the
Um,
red.
I would say May to June timeframe before this would start.
Board signs on the red, I signed on the yellow.
Board signs on the
I
red.
think I am. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And who signs on the yellow?
Me.
Okay. Sign the red. Only the red. Yes. Anything that has red under my signature. Kevin, can you just make sure we didn't miss any before everybody leaves this after?
Well, not originally, state New York, Long Island, Western Mass. It's a triangle.
Did they get them all? No. At this point, we're going to move forward with the rest of the agenda, and I would ask that if you're having a conversation about maybe pools, you could move to the hallway. We're going to start now with a brief discussion with Jess Dodds regarding 360 reviews. Jess has met with Heather and Art Lawrence to discuss the 360 reviews and how one would work here after request from David McDougall to look into such reviews 2 meetings ago. In response to this item of discussion, Jim Palermo has submitted a letter of opposition to such reviews that he has requested also be considered by the Board of Selectmen in his absence. I think that the letter from Jim, I hope, is in your packet.
Hey, Franco.
Kevin, is it? Oh, no. Okay. So when John's done signing, I'll send the letter down from Jim. At this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Dodds.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you.
So just a brief background on what a 360 review is. It's also called a multi-rater review, and it gives the person who is being reviewed the opportunity to rate themselves, and it also gives the opportunity for his or her supervisors or bosses to rate that person based on the questions, obviously, that typically come up in the job description. Additionally, the person being rated can also decide who he or she would like to be rated by with respect to peers and colleagues and direct reports. So the idea here is to move forward on how we see ourselves and how others see us can be a very, very good cornerstone for forward progress. We oftentimes cannot necessarily be aware of how we're seen by others and how we see ourselves. That's relatively common. This also is, I think, a tremendous step up from the annual performance review, or PA, performance appraisal, that many, many people don't look forward to. If you ever worked in a company, your annual review is typically a beat-em-up sort of session where the incompetent managers will go over the last year. You did this wrong, this wrong, this wrong. So we're looking here to not do that so much, but as to, not at all, but is to rate and rank the person, typically on a scale from 1 to 5, which is certainly a scale. It's called the Likert scale. It's well accepted in psychology. And it's, we think, a very, very good format. I had put together a draft. Did you see that in your notes? And I also noticed, though, that I misnamed the select board as SB, where it should be BOS. So, my bad. But
No problem.
what you have here in that sample format is one sample question that could be asked, in this case, of the town accountant. We were looking at two, the town accountant and the fire chief. So question number 2 in the list of 20 questions that Art, Heather, and myself developed, it's, does the accountant make appropriate decisions related to the town accountant office, including timely and accurate documents, record keeping, and compliance with state filings? And then your choices are greatly exceeds, meets, lacking, or strongly lacking. And as you can see in the little boxes underneath this, so this actually would be what you would see as the final printout. So how does this person rank himself or herself on that scale? And how each of the individual select board members would rank this person on that same scale. And then over to the right, what is the select board or board of selectmen average? And then underneath, we would not individually name the direct reports and peers or colleagues who had done this ranking, because you want some anonymity in this too. So you all, as the bosses or supervisors, would be individually not identified or identifiable, but you certainly would be here so you can see how you compare with others. And additionally, you can put a space for comments in this. So questions 12, 13, and 14 are more likely to engender comments than a numerical rating or ranking. And those have to do with, are there any specific strengths or skills that this person has that you would like to make other people aware of? And then secondarily, are there any areas for improvement? That's it in a nutshell. This, I understand that there may be a way of doing this electronically that Heather was looking into, using SurveyMonkey or something like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would take, some sheets of paper, of course, to do this, and somebody to manually transfer the data from the groups anonymously onto this final format.
Is there a way, so when I think of the fire chief, I mean, I see that there's a spot for the Board of Selectmen to rank them, but if you wanted the employees of the fire department to be a part of this, would we just add boxes and, or would they, where would they put their?
They would
Oh,
show up as an average here, so there would be a sheet of paper, a separate sheet of paper
Okay.
that would have to be given to each
I
of
see.
the volunteers.
Okay.
Jess, when you say colleagues, speaking of the fire department, would the colleagues be the police chief, or the colleagues be the rank and file of the fire department?
No, that would be the police chief, people of similar rank.
Highway super?
Right.
Okay.
Good question.
So subordinates, are you looking at that?
Subordinates are direct reports, is what we call.
Right,
Right,
and that's on there,
and that's on there too.
yeah,
Yes.
right.
Now, Jess,
Colleagues, go ahead.
Did we use this before? We used
We
this.
did. We did this with Diana Schindler. I put together one several years ago, and it still actually is in the files.
How do you feel it worked?
I thought it worked quite well. We were able to identify some areas for specific improvement. So what we're looking at here, too, is this really is the beginning of a development plan. So, okay, you have these ratings, these rankings, who's where, and what can we do to narrow the gap, if there is indeed a big gap between your rating, and the, say in this case, the town accountant's rating. So again, what we're looking to do here is to move forward positively in a development plan. So this is the first step of a development plan. It's not this is how bad you are. It really is,
Right.
this is how you're doing, in comparison with how you see yourself.
I would assume if there's an outlier there, somebody who really hates Joe or whoever it is, it would show up quickly in the average, so you could determine what the issue was and maybe work back on that one.
Yes, correct. The outliers that you would see would be as noted here on this. So you would see the average of the
Right.
colleagues and the peers and direct reports.
Right, but would we know, if we had a department head and the average came out to 4, would we know that 4 people gave this person a 5 and 1 gave them a 1, so that we knew maybe there was some work needed with that person on the relationship?
You'd be moving away then, John, from the anonymity that you need, I think?
Okay.
It's a good question. In the space for comments, that could come up, though. People are free to put in their own verbal comments.
If- Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Do the people, the direct reports or the colleagues, identify themselves in the paperwork that they pass in?
No, it's all anonymous.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a key element of this, of any 360 review, with the exception of the bosses, is that anybody else needs to be anonymous. In my years of doing this, if somebody says, gee, I'm going to be found out, and I don't want to rate somebody negatively or too high or whatever, then they will skew their numbers and their responses.
I didn't know if this was like a double blind, so the direct report averages only one person would know the individual, and that person would keep it
It's
confidential.
a double blind, yes. Yeah.
You had mentioned using SurveyMonkey. I'm just wondering if, when you use that, say you get 30 responses, you get an average, I would assume, at the end of whatever that score was, but does it maybe graph where the responses came? Like, you don't know who they came from, but you may see 1, 1, 1, 3, 3, and so you would know how many, and then, you know, lead you down a different road of development, but you may see to your point, the 1 and 4 5s, you know?
You should be able to do a scatter plot.
Okay.
Okay, so
so that
that's
you can
possible
see
with
that If you
SurveyMonkey?
have outliers, even if you can't do it with SurveyMonkey, because you'd get, you know, if random person A, random person B, they're all different individual responses. So even if you take them and, plot them out in Excel, or
Right.
put them into Excel,
Okay.
you can create a scatter.
Right. Francine?
Built into this plan, is there a mechanism to come back and revisit deficit areas? And how is that going to be?
Sure. Very, very good question. Actually, one of the tools that I'm certified in is Personnel Decisions International, and they have a product called Time to Change, which is usually given 6 months after the initial 360. So you could certainly do something like that. Here, this is, call it a homegrown or an office-grown version of the 360 PDI model. So yes, we could certainly do that and say, to what extent has this person who was ranked or rated improved or maintained the same or moved in the opposite direction? Excellent question.
Randall? Would you mind just coming a little closer?
Some things that jumped out thinking about this, Randall Kemp, Highway Superintendent. What would stop somebody from taking the survey multiple times? Is there any mechanism, since it's anonymous? I'm thinking, go ahead.
We're working on figuring out what we can do with electronic devices. I mean, one of the things Jess said is, we can have someone like himself who's outside of the organization, have them all sent to him. And if Peter's got the same handwriting 6 times, you're going to find out about the same answers. But ultimately, the idea is we have to come up with some identifying feature, whether it's a random number, okay, Randall, I'm going to contact you, and when you go to enter it in, you're going to enter yourself in as number 6. And that way, when Jess gets it on SurveyMonkey, he's just going to have, you're going to come up as number 6, but he'll have the master key somewhere else, so it maybe take away the double blind, but it's someone outside, so his only purpose of doing that is if number 6 keeps responding in, or 6W7Q, he knows that you're getting overly zealous.
Okay, second question. So in town, we have positions with different numbers of subordinates. Wouldn't you think that if you've recently disciplined several of your subordinates, you're going to have a much different score than somebody who maybe has one subordinate? Or how do you address that, Jess?
Sure. What we do ideally, Randall, is we try to get as many respondents as possible. In this case, the respondents are limited, so we would look to the comments in this case. And you're right, there's not really much you can do about that. There may be some personal retributions that people do try to do through these things. And that happens here, it happens in other places that I've worked as well. Yeah, it's a good question. That said, they will show up as a separate category. They mean peers, colleagues, direct reports. So if you see a huge gulf and everybody else is within half a percentage point, then you could make the attribution that, gee, there may be somebody who has some grudge or something like that. Yeah, you're right. You can also follow these up. Another thing I do sometimes is personal interviews, too, with people as a follow-up. You're looking puzzled. No, you're right. Amanda.
Well, as you say, where's the anonymity when you have several departments with only one other person working?
Exactly. That's a shortcoming to anonymity. If you have only one direct report, you essentially give up that anonymity. So what you could do there is simply have the person rate himself or herself and let the Board of Selectmen rank them too, and not have that colleague-peer category. Because you're right, you're running the risk of, because there's no anonymity there, then that person may not want to respond truthfully. Or accurately is a better word.
Right. Are there other questions from the board?
No, he just answered my question.
Did you see the opposition letter?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd be curious to hear it if I
Sure,
may.
I'd be happy to read it. It's lengthy, but I can,
Okay, I have till 7:30, then I...
oh, we have plenty of time. So it says, "Dear Select Board members, in the strongest possible terms, I respectfully request that the Select Board reject the adoption of a 360-degree feedback program for its employee appraisals and evaluations. Even the most supportive studies and articles relating to 360 caution that it must be implemented properly, which requires a high degree of expertise. Thus, in articles in Forbes warns that when 360s are done poorly, they can be a disaster. Another author cautions that 360s can have a bad and even an ugly side. Similar notes of caution are echoed in almost every article I have found dealing with 360s, even those articles written by authors who encourage the use of 360s. Southampton does not have the expertise to implement a successful program. Even the most ardent proponents of 360s recognize that great care is required when designing the instruments used to solicit feedback and inputs from people other than an employee's primary appraiser. What information, for example, is relevant from peers, and how can it be obtained with the exclusion of gossip and personal animus? How can employees be assured that their coworkers are not spying on them or intending to do harm in order to make themselves look better, especially when merit pay is in play? The less you get, the more there is for me to get. Southampton cannot afford to pay for experts. Implementation of 360 is a prolonged, labor-intensive process requiring a high degree of expertise. Accordingly, professional services related to the project would be very high and, in my opinion, not worth the expenditure. It appears that each person who prepares employee appraisals would have to undergo some degree of training. The methodology underlying employee appraisals may be a mandatory subject of collective bargaining for employees represented by a union, especially if management seeks to include bargaining unit members in the appraisal process. It is, oh man, he's using big words.
It's a curse.
What is the
Animus
word?
in there.
No, it's.
Anathema, is that it?
anything that's-
Anathema.
It means a curse, right, or something
Yeah,
like that.
it's bad stuff.
Okay. To the concept of unionization for a union member to undermine a union sister or brother, an offense which in many cases would expose the member to internal union fines and sanctions. Thus, for management to broach 360s during contract negotiations has the potential to fracture employee morale, which is especially counterproductive during a time when management and employees need to work together in seeking economies of operation. On a personal note, I can think of a few things as negative to employee morale than for an employee to worry about whether the coworker with whom she has confided for years will turn on her. For example, an employee may be hesitant to turn to his coworker for help in understanding how a job is to be performed. What ordinarily would be a healthy interaction could be transformed into a comment from the coworker that his workmate is slow to learn new procedures or lacking in knowledge. In other words, in my opinion, besides being plain creepy, 360s have the potential to render workers less cooperative with one another and less trusting. That can translate into lost production, sagging morale, and an unhealthy work environment. While 360s have been used in Fortune 500 companies and other major corporations, I believe for many reasons, including those noted above, that 360s are not appropriate for Southampton. Accordingly, I urge the Select Board to reject any proposal to adopt such a procedure in any form. Very truly yours, Jim Palermo.
I'm getting the sense in that Jim is talking about using the 360 amongst employees rather than supervisors. We're just talking supervisors here, are we, or?
I think we would use it for people that we would ordinarily have a performance appraisal for. So we
Department
wouldn't,
head.
right, we wouldn't be giving a performance appraisal to the people who worked in the treasurer's office. That would be, for the treasurer to do. But I think in terms of what we're looking for, which we've said before, it's very hard for us five to tell the fire chief what he can do better because we're not in the department every day. It would be very hard for me to tell Randall what he can improve on because I don't work with Randall every day. So although I see where Jim is coming from, I'm not quite sure that I agree.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about department head and above, I think that's a whole different conversation than if we're talking about rank and file. I mean,
Right.
I like the idea, or at least discuss it for department heads and above.
Yeah, I concur.
If I may correct something, I happen to be a certified interpreter, administrator of the Personnel Decisions International 360, which is one of the top 3 in the world. And I have a lot of experience with it, with very senior people and very regular people, too,
Yeah.
in English and Spanish.
Well, that's positive.
No, not Polish.
Oh,
Are there any other questions for
Can I
Mr.
ask
Dodd?
us highway super?
Sure.
Highway super, how do you feel about a 360? How would that make you feel? Not to put you on the spot, but you're the only supervisor here, so.
My questions to Jess will probably lead you to my feelings about how it would go.
Yes.
I think the thing to keep in mind with the 360 review is not only is it, for instance, the department head, not only is the Board of Selectmen ranking the person, the individual's ranking themselves, other colleagues are ranking, and then the direct respondents are ranking. So the idea is amongst all the information, you're going to get some truth to the matter. Everyone may not say it's a 4, everyone may not say the average is a 3, but between everyone, you're going to get the idea of, that's, I think, the purpose of the 360, is, maybe the average of direct respondents is only a 2, but maybe the average of the board is a 5, and then the colleagues is a 3, so it kind of puts you, where really are we sitting here? Because everyone's going to look at something differently.
right,
Right.
right. There's a certain amount of subjectivity to any of these tools. These are assessment tools, absolutely. But what we're trying to do here is, I'm assuming you have the right, actually, if not the requirement, to conduct personal assessments of some sort for these department heads, too. So, yes, with respect to the union, if that somehow renders a person incapacitated and could not be judged, gosh, I don't know, don't we all have the right to make evaluations of people, of things like that? And in any case, too, so I was a little bit amazed to hear that.
Yes.
Sir.
I'm open-minded as far as the 360 is concerned, but to make a decision, what other options are
Sure.
out there that we could look at and make a good guess that might be a better fit for us?
Sure, absolutely. I appreciate the question. One would be a 360, which is just the self of the whoever is being evaluated and yourselves, and a comparison there. So that would be sort of a gap analysis, how they see themselves and how you see them. And then from that, you could move towards a development plan. So plan also is synonymous with goals, and I'm assuming that you have goals. I noted in the fire chief's contract, there's 2 or 3 pages of goals. So I'm assuming there will be some goals for the town accountant as well, should you do this. Another option would be for someone like myself to come in as an anonymous outsider and conduct some interviews, something like that. And I have a lot of experience in formulating those questions and keeping it all quiet, too. So those really are the 2 options. The other option is to use one of the commercial PAs, performance appraisals that are out there, the forms that many of you may have seen in your work life. Those are also numerically ranked, and those are typically the supervisor and the person typically has the right to reject or to rebut in those PAs or performance appraisals. So that really is your third option. And the fourth option is to do nothing, but then, again, if there are developmental needs and or strengths that you have, it's a good idea to be aware of those.
I mean, in years past, I think we used as a template the Mass Municipal Association's guidelines for evaluating managers. I think it was cumbersome, and I think as a whole, most people doing the review was the Board of Selectmen. And most of it's set up for comments for improvements or for corrections or to add additional things that could be considered. And then there's a scoring by each individual selectman, and it gets a total. We do that, but we also bring in the individual managers and review with them our pros and cons, our evaluations where we feel need for improvement. Now, a lot of that is based on how the department is perceived being run. Is there a lot of problems coming to us? Is there a lot of phone calls about stuff not getting done? Is there the work schedule and goals that we're hoping to get done that year were completed? And what is the issues that we have to deal with that should have been dealt with by that manager? So those things are taken into consideration, and that's how we formulated our response. But the response was given that night. Hopefully, the manager would leave here, take that as stuff for improvement. But sometimes I think they walk out of here as, with a chip on their shoulders, they don't see everything that's being done. With that being said, I do believe there should be a follow-up to see how things are being done, say 6 months, 5 months down the road, or whatever it may be, to see how those concerns that we have, or the good things we see happen, are continued.
Right.
And, I mean, the 360, I don't think would address that. I don't think we'd be able to get our ideas out there that we see as town managers, that problems come to us about our managers, or our good things that come to us about our managers. And we need to relate that to them, and the goals and objectives are being met. And I think that's one of our biggest tools that we have as a board, and I hate to lose that.
The MMA, the Mass Municipal,
What's that?
the MMA tool, you mean?
Well, that's just a boilerplate. But when you look at some of the questions that are in there, you know, you can interpretate to your own decisions and evaluate them, and they give you a score of 1 through 5, 5 being tops and 1 being very poor.
That's what I had projected here, too. That's a scale, it's called the Likert scale in psychology. Absolutely. So, again, for a 360, I think one of the benefits and advantages here would be certainly, as I suggested here, a space for comments, and also I had a specific question, 2 questions in there. What are the strengths of this person as well? My own work, my own coaching practice is based really on people advancing their strengths, and call it bringing the rest with them.
And you know, not everybody, the manager, is going to make a mistake. Hopefully they learn from it.
Sure.
And sometimes it's good to say, hey, you know, you're weak here, you need to improve, and then you come back and look at that, because you should have those notes from the prior year when you evaluate this individual.
Well, there's another tool that I use too, which came out of Boston University, BU, which is giving constructive feedback. So how you actually would review the tool with that person can make a huge difference. And again, many managers who aren't skilled and trained in this will come up with, you did this wrong, this wrong, this wrong. It's not what it's about. It's about, okay, I see you as being very strong and very competent in these areas, as evidenced by whichever tool you use. And further, I do see a couple of areas where your skills could use some enhancement. How might we address those? And usually that person will leave with something close to a smile when they leave that session. Again, if you just go in and say, wrong, 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 of course they're going to walk out with a big chip. I don't blame them.
I agree. I think in the last year or so, the performance appraisals we've used have been lackluster, to say the least. I think, you know, the board gets them and we look at them, and some people put comments and some people don't. I don't think the presentation to the person you're appraising is well done at all. You know, 5 people sitting there telling you what they might kind of think, because you don't really want to hurt anybody's feelings, is not the best way to go about giving somebody constructive feedback or criticism. I think that the 360 review is going to give you a much broader idea of what's actually happening, and if there's something that's not going well, then it's up to us to make sure that we follow up and that we do our jobs, and in 6 months call them back in and ask them pertinent questions, direct questions about where their movement is on that particular topic.
You're talking about a PIP.
PIP is a personal improvement
Yes.
plan. My point here also is that 360's evolved in an attempt to reduce the leverage that one manager would have over one employee. You know, this is how I see you, this is how your peers see you, this is how your colleagues see you, this is how your direct reports see you. So, of course, the more you have of those people, the more anonymity you have. But again, it's very, very important to understand how others see you.
Right.
And similarly, very important for whoever is delivering the messages from that to understand how to do it. And I can work with you also on some constructive feedback sessions, too. So.
Very good. Are there any other questions? So at this point, we have 2 performance evaluations that are coming up, the fire chief and the town accountant, which need to be done in the month of April. So the board needs to decide, do you want to move forward with the 360 review format, or would you prefer to use the performance evaluation format that we've used in the past?
I personally don't think that, I agree with you, what we used in the past is not good. We sat down there, I think we did the highway department and the fire, or the police chief. But when we're talking to either of them, we had no clue what the other department heads even thought of these people, good, bad, or indifferent.
Right.
It was like we were in a vacuum, and what I knew about that person I was saying, but it was just a slice. So we need a better process. You know, this is an option for a better process. But we've got to conduct it carefully if we
Right.
use it.
Gentlemen, any thoughts?
I just want to see other options. I'm not ready yet for the 360, but that's me.
I was on the board when we used the 360 for the former town administrator, and I thought it actually went quite well. I think the goal of an evaluation is to develop what, we call a PIP, is, develop a plan to give the employee the tools to succeed. Because as that employee succeeds, the town succeeds. We don't need to be here slapping people's wrists. We need to be here to bring them to their fullest potential and to get them the tools to do that. And sometimes it's a hard discussion, but it's being an honest discussion. You don't want to sugarcoat certain things when you're trying to actually do the right thing. It's hard sometimes to do the right thing. And I think the 360, more than MMA, gives us a better way of doing that. Because it just does.
Well, if that was the outcome, fine, but in order for an individual to get that information, for us to do our decision in scoring, I think I won't say it's flawed, but I don't know if it's a good fit with Southampton having peers evaluating. It's a small town, and you could have the best of friends evaluating people and scoring them very high, and you can have peers that have a chip on their shoulder because they got reprimanded because they're 20 minutes late for the last month, and they're going to take it out on somebody. I just think to see that the individual having the 360, I have a hard time with him picking the people that's going to do his review.
I don't think that he would pick the person. I think
Well,
that if you're going
that's
to.
Some latitude, that's a negotiated solution usually. You get a chance to pick some of your own, and we sometimes split it up 50-50, but again, there's not a lot of people here.
No.
So typically, we would do 50% would be the boss picking, and 50% would be the person being evaluated.
Since we're talking about such a small number of people in each department, why wouldn't you just give it to everybody?
Right. In this case, yes. So suggesting you could customize this for the town, and if there were too few, to not use the peers, colleagues, and direct reports
Exactly.
section, but simply do the select board and the individual, the self,
Right.
yeah, as an
I just
option.
have a problem with, it's not like every manager has a set amount of people. They go from one employee to no employees that they're supervising to 30 employees, 10 employees, it's going to be some inconsistencies there.
What you can do, though, Ed, is you can look at the data points, and if you just look at the select board information and the person being interviewed, evaluated information, and you could look at just those numbers if it gets really kind of screwy with the other numbers. And based on that, you would be able to get a better way of giving some feedback to the person that's being evaluated. And you may not have to look at the other data. I mean, you can look at it or not look at it and make a decision whether it's relevant or not. And
I'm just very concerned I said I'm not opposed to the process, I'm just opposed to who's doing the evaluation or doing the filling out the forms, because a manager, a good manager, has to deal with managers' rights. And he's got to run that department in an efficient and effective way. Sometimes he's going to step on people's toes. And maybe every one of them on a given day is going to get stepped on. Because, wait a minute, he got chastised by the board because he saw Joe Blow out in the corner with one shovel and 4 workers looking at a hole and not doing anything. And he gets that message and he chastised them. What do you think is going to happen if his review comes out the next week? That's all I'm saying. The information is only as good as you're looking for to be constructive. But destructive conversation and stuff where they have an opportunity to be anonymous and get a payback that somebody's carrying in the back of their head because he's been reprimanded, he's been overlooked for a raise for 2 years, he didn't get that incentive. I don't think it should be part of the process. Because now you're leaving us to wean that out of there.
I'm not sure I
The
understand.
Board of Selectmen is going to be the final person scoring that. Am I right on the 360?
No.
I thought I was.
Well, I mean, you're gonna, but you're, I don't think anybody, there's not a final person that's scoring. You're getting an average of what the Board of Selectmen feels. You're getting an average of what, and I'm looking at Randall, so I'm gonna say Randall, what the highway people feel. I mean, I can't imagine, A, it's not like we have to use this forever. B, the process that we've used in the past does not work. It doesn't tell anybody anything except what we see. And we can all be very honest here. All 5 of us are not present every day, all day long, to see what's happening. It's not the truth. And so if you want to give anybody any sort of constructive criticism, you have to know what's happening within the department.
Right.
That's all there is to it. I mean, it doesn't mean that we're going to use it once and that's it. We're going to use it once and we're going to say, okay, this worked, and this worked, but that didn't, and that didn't. We need to change that. We need to change the number of people that take it. We need to change who takes it. Maybe we missed somebody that should have taken it. Maybe the questions weren't right, but you're not going to know if you don't try it. If it comes back and everybody hates Randall, then, you know, we have a bigger problem, but I can't imagine that's what's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that, I think if you're taking this anonymously, whether or not you've been disciplined for being late for 20 minutes for a week, I think the person that was late for 20 minutes for a week probably isn't going to hold that against them because they know that they were wrong to be going. It's anonymous. It's not like you're going to say Joe Schmo handed this in. I think, I'm hopeful, I guess I'm hopeful that somebody's going to say, you know what, I was wrong, and I'm not going to hold that against my boss.
I don't think so, but yeah.
Well, there is a little bit of
That's
a
unfortunate.
talk that's typically given generally by the person being evaluated, who does talk to his colleagues and peers in an honest way, says, look, I have been selected to have this 360 review process, and I would certainly appreciate your genuine, authentic opinions. If you have any particular problems, let's you and I talk about those independently and individually, so this actually can become a great timing to talk about something that may go on before it gets put onto a 360.
Right.
So, but it's then incumbent on the manager to be able to do that, too. And a good manager
Can do
ideally
that.
would be able to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, also, I think in an annual review, if you're sitting down with a manager, and this is the first time you're telling him or her they're doing something wrong, you're not doing your job.
Exactly.
Right.
This should be a
exactly.
continual conversation throughout the year, and the review is just a summary of what you've talked about during the year
Right.
with progress and goals.
I'm going to take Randall's comment, and then I'm going to hope the board decides to move in one direction or another. Randall?
One last, not hypothetical. So a manager makes a tough decision such as furloughing employees. You don't think that's going to depress their average? Just consider something like that.
But
I see your point, but I guess it's going to depend on when your appraisal falls, which, you know, may or may not be beneficial to you,
Right.
you know?
And it's just my point that sometimes you have to do things as a manager that may not be popular,
Absolutely.
and so you can be evaluated with that in mind.
But you're going to do your own appraisal, too, that says, bear in mind, I just furloughed all of my employees. And so, you know, I think there's going to be some room to see where those numbers are falling.
Yeah, no, I think it's important that you bring the paperwork or whatever right to the meeting and say, here's why I think this happened.
Right.
The other thing I think to keep in mind, Randall, is that on both of these ones that we drafted so far, one of them has 20 questions and the other one has 26 specific questions. So it's not, do you like Joe? Do you not like Joe? The questions are more like, does the accountant interact well with other departments,
Right.
personnel, and citizens?
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that the outside person who's reviewing these, if he sees that Joe or whoever rated someone at 3 on everything, it might just nullify the entire application, or 1 on everything. You have to, you know, things should vary. These questions are going to vary. There's even questions that open it up for open comment. I think one of the benefits that might come out of this from the manager side of you is that sometimes, you know, there's things we may be able to do better, and sometimes it's helpful if colleagues point it out to us. So if this is given, you know, if we're doing my review and it's given out to all my colleagues, including, you know, treasurer's office, accountant's office, town clerk, highway, police, fire, et cetera, eventually someone's going to say, hey, you know, I'd feel better if you made more eye contact. Or, you know, when you say this, can you try to breathe first, because sometimes it comes out too forceful. Whatever it is. But, you know, this is the opportunity for them to provide it. The other thing that's nice is this is different from what we've done in the past, so that the board's not sitting there reading through everyone, okay, well, I said it was okay on one, I gave them a 2 on one, I gave them a 3 on one. No one's going to know what the board actually gave individual Joe. Everyone, board 1 through 5 is anonymous. The other benefit is you don't have to read through the whole thing in public. It's, generally not considered public record for people to have a performance review. So generally, this document provides more privacy. And it's also the benefit where someone can really see the full picture. Okay, the Board of Selectmen think I'm doing a great job, I think I'm doing a great job, colleagues, and underlings, not really. So, it's just perception.
And that's also the basis for a conversation. And I just, if I may have 30 seconds also, I just showed these to Randall. These are the questions that we developed that are taken from the job description. So as Heather said, they're very, very specific to the person in the job. They're not about general personalities and whether or
Right.
not they breathe and things like that. So, absolutely.
Last one.
Is there a cost to these services?
I think SurveyMonkey's free, if we chose to move that way, and if not, we'd have to discuss, somebody populating that information for us, but,
And I've agreed to forego my fee of $200 an hour to zero.
very good. Thank you. From the board, which way would you like to move?
I make a motion to move ahead with the 360 evaluation for the upcoming evals.
Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Is there any other discussion?
Are we thinking we'll try it on a couple or a full cycle, then come back and decide if it's working for us? Is
I
that
think
what you
that
thought,
would-
Dave?
I think that's what we always do. I mean,
Right.
let's talk about the winter storm policy.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about that every winter
Right.
for the past 10 years. So we're always reevaluating.
Bad example, we don't want to do that.
No, but I'm just saying, it's something that can be reevaluated.
Okay, so as long as that's the intent, I'm fine.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Dodd, so
Okay,
much for your
certainly
time.
welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to skip ahead, for those of you following the agenda, to 5.3. We have Todd Bard here, the energy consultant. He's returned with the latest quotes for the electricity for all of our municipal buildings. If we like what we hear, we need to vote to move forward with a multi-year or a single-year contract. Good evening.
Good evening, how you doing?
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. It's been a few months since I was last here. So I think I forwarded a spreadsheet over to Heather and Kevin, kind of outlining the prices from 4 different electricity suppliers. So I know it's lots of numbers on that spreadsheet, but I think with what happened this past year with natural gas and electricity generation, you've seen a real spike in energy costs. So to look at any short-term contracts, I think would be foolish in one sense, because it's going to get us back into the same predicament of energy's predicted to go up again in the wintertime, and we're in the shoulder months right now where energy pricing is down. So to lock into a 6-month, I don't think would be wise. A 12 or 18th month would be more advisable. And in fact, the town of Ware I did for a 2-year last fall, so it'd be kind of like another year and a half now. Pathfinder Regional, we did a 2-year, I think, on that one last fall because energy prices were low and they wanted to lock in their budgets and get them through the winter spikes. So, if you look at these prices, the 18th month, which I like right now, the best price is JDF Suez at 0.098 cents, which is roughly a little over 3 cents per kilowatt hour savings compared to what you're paying right now with Western Mass Electric or Eversource now. So that would be roughly about a $20,000 annual savings to the town, locking in at that price. Now, grant you, that's an annual price, and Wamiko Eversource rates are gonna drop probably in June or July. They don't know what they're dropping to. So I don't know what that figure is gonna be. But again, it's predicted to go back up for next winter, just like National Grid and NSTAR. All their rates are going to go back up next year and possibly the year after. And this is a recoup of a lot of their natural gas costs that they didn't predict last winter
that they're able to recoup now. So any loss that a utility company has passes through to their customers. So that's allowed by the DPU and the DOER. So this is kind of what's happening now. The 13.3 National Grid is actually 23 cents. So that was a huge spike, and that's what you're going to continue to see until we really resolve the natural gas capacity issues we have in New England. So, and in fact, I just looked at 2 utilities, Holyoke Gas and Electric and Berkshire Gas is actually having a moratorium. You can't put new gas supply on a home or a business for the next 3 years. So it's either propane gas or oil or something else.
Including a new building, or?
And yeah, if you build a new building, in Berkshire Gas, it's actually right now. Holyoke says maybe the next couple of years you might be able to get gas supply. They don't know if it's going to be in the next 3 to 5 years, so.
What
There'll be-
happened with the gas turbine power plant that's going in Westfield, that they're gonna take the reservoir water to cool? What happened to that? I thought they were gonna run a new gas line to Westfield. They're gonna take, so many millions of gallons that are allowed Holyoke, which is way under capacity, so they have this free excess of water, and they're gonna put a pipeline in to tie their excess water into this gas turbine plant in Westfield. I thought that was a go.
I have not heard anything on that. That will help, but it's not going to help until it's a controversial issue.
But I'm just saying it's a gas turbine, so was there, I just don't know, was there a gas line coming into the area that was put on the moratorium? It's not Keystone's out west, but is this something else, or?
No, well, this is because the capacity for getting natural gas to New England is constrained. So they can't give more capacity for new buildings, new homes, if there's already a constraint. Because their job is to keep that supply to their current customers and have a safe issue of getting
I
natural
guess
gas.
I'm just a little confused. I mean, there were hearings that I attended in Westfield, there were hearings about this turbine plant going in, and, questions about taking water from one aquifer and then dumping it into another aquifer. And it was all of this conversation that Southampton wasn't involved in. I think the governor came out here at some point, and there was a photo op at the reservoir town. That's gone by the way?
I have
Because of the
not heard anything new about that whatsoever.
So it used to be Tenneco. What is it now?
So, well, it used to be, Tennessee Gas, now it's El Paso.
El Paso.
Which is now it will be Kinder Morgan.
Kinder Morgan.
Yeah.
And they have no plans to expand delivery of natural gas.
That's the Kinder Morgan line. That's why there's a big push to try to get more natural gas through Kinder Morgan with bigger pipes, new additional lines, and then to try to get natural gas generation. We've always had this issue up in New England, and now it's just come to a forefront. So something's got to be. And solar is helping it, but it's not, and wind is helping it, but we're going to lose in the next, I think, 6 or 7 years, 4,000 megawatts of energy generation. In Holyoke and Mount Tom is
Well,
one.
they're upgrading coming down onto Quebec now. They're upgrading some of the lines coming through the Berkshires, from what I understand.
Right, but the Hydro-Quebec won't come into full force for many, many years.
So given the rates that you gave us, you're suggesting that the GDF Suez for 18 months is the best rate for us to lock in at?
Yes, at .098 per kilowatt hour.
Okay. Is there any questions from the board?
Is that 100% lock?
100% lock, no swing penalties, so they can't come back after you for any penalties, any additional fees.
But also, if it dumps, we have to buy it at .098.
Yeah, so if
There's
price
no
went
up or
down to
down.
.95 and we waited 2 weeks, you don't get that .95.
What is your feel of what's going to happen in 6 months? Just a gut.
Honestly, I think energy is going to slowly, continually go up. I don't think we're doing enough to try to get natural gas supply or renewables to a higher level. I think wind and solar is a big opportunity that we're kind of missing right now. And we did a great job, but it's stalled, and now we got to raise the net metering caps. I mean, I just met with Worcester State University, who's a client of mine, and I did a solar project for them last year, saving them $200,000 on their energy. We're doing a second one for them, we'll save an additional $300,000. So they'll annually save $500,000 on their electricity costs by using solar credits.
We talked about putting solar panels over at the landfill.
Yep.
a few years back. Is that still something that's marketable, that's profitable for a town?
Yep, absolutely. Yep. And that's what I do. So I'll look at different brownfield sites, landfill sites, greenfield, what's greenfield sites. So, you know, if a farmer has 20 acres, he's not producing food on it, or whatever he wants to produce on it, you can put 20 acres of solar on it.
You can put them high enough so the cows can still graze.
They don't do that in New England, which I wish they would do, but they do it in Europe.
Really?
Actually,
Yeah.
They do it. We do it up in Amherst.
Yeah, well, Amherst is,
There's
but
trials.
They have
up
shorter
it was a
cows.
trial, and they got a lot of funding from the state, so they're an anomaly. So
Okay.
when they want money, they get a check written.
Well, that's not true. I was involved with that project. That's not true.
I'm just
Well, they
look-
got a lot of grant money for that project.
I'm just looking at this current bill that is here, and so just for comparison, is this, can you look, am I looking at the right number? Is this what we're currently paying? As
0.94.
compared to,
Yeah,
so
some rates will be higher than 13 cents. I use the average.
okay.
So smaller rates, smaller accounts will pay higher,
Okay.
larger accounts.
But in comparison, so I can just see the two.
So I guess
Okay,
that's 14.4, so your savings actually are higher in those accounts
okay.
and then less on other accounts.
So this is strictly for supply.
Strictly for supply.
Side of it, that big increase this year is gonna stay with us.
Well, no, that actually big increase, Ed, was mostly on the supply side, not the,
Well, I
not
remember
the
big fight
distribution.
to get all that additional line items put in there for storm damage repair and everything else, which is part of distribution.
Yes,
That
a
was
little
big
bit
part
of it was, but the bulk of it was all on the supply side, that pass-through. See, WMECO, and Eversource, and National Grid, and NSTAR can't profit on supply anymore. That was deregulated back in 1998. But to recoup their losses, they couldn't raise the other KWH charges to a high level. The only way was get it through supply. And so when the new
generation-
supply rates came out, that's how they're recouping those revenues.
Generation charge is what we're talking about, right, on the bill?
Today, with what I'm talking about, is supply charges.
The delivery, well,
That basic, what's called default service, it should be basic default service, supply.
basic fixed?
Yep,
Yeah, it says generation service,
yep,
yeah, for the generation.
that's it there.
side.
Yeah, so it's not
Not the
distribution.
delivery,
No.
okay.
Delivery is a utility company's profit.
Right, and that's where all the adjustments are.
Yep.
There's already a motion and second.
Well, we already voted. No, did we vote?
There's no motion and there's no second.
Well, I move that we go for the 6-month locked-in rate. It seems the most profitable at this time.
6 months?
His
I vote
suggestion
18
was
months.
18 months would be the most profitable and give us a $20,000 annual
That was
savings.
the 6 months.
No, 18 months.
He's asking for 18.098, not the .090. What would happen for 9 months? What would, or for 6 months, what would your projection be there?
It'd be just .09, so you're about 4 cents off, so about $28,000 savings.
28,000?
That'd just be annually, but your savings will only be 14, because it's a 6-month contract.
Okay, versus how many for 18 months, 20-something thousand?
So it'd be, it's 3.2 cents times 700,000 kilowatt hours, so it's about $22,000 for 1 year. So if you split it to 11,000, where you're saving 14,000 for the lower rate on 6 months, so you're saving $3,000 less, but then we have to reprice it in 6 months, and the prices have gone back up. Now,
If they go up, yeah.
in 6 months, if it's predicted that we're gonna have a tough winter, you'll see rates going up. And they're going to go up for Eversource, National Grid, and NSTAR.
On this bill in here, you got it, Eversource is charging us $1.43.3. For what, is it? And yours is gonna be, we went 18 months.
Point zero-
0.98, right?
Yeah, .098.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was all over the news, and you made reference to it, and they're not sure how much they're gonna drop it, but how much are you think they're gonna drop these supply rates? Is that only gonna be until we have the next demand for generation?
So it'll drop for the next 3 to 6 months, and then it'll go back up. So always on the shoulder months, which are the end of March, April, partly into May, you'll see a drop, and that's why I like to price contracts this time, not pricing in the middle of winter or the middle of summer. What it's gonna fall to, I don't know, but it was much higher beforehand than.
They were talking 33%.
Yeah. So if they go down a third, it'll be roughly right where we're at, but it's just a short-term contract. Yeah.
So there's a motion for 6 months.
withdraw my motion for 6 months.
I would accept a motion now.
I accept the motion, I mean, I make a motion for 18 months for GDF.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in,
And just, to get a better energy policy, been on the board for a wee bit, and the electricity thing comes up just about on a yearly basis. There was this great thing that Hampshire County of Government, HCOG, put together where we were signing on for some of the first communities to sign on, and we were actually supposed to get profit sharing. This is back in '07-ish or something like that, and HCOG couldn't deliver, so we ended up moving away from that. But I think as a board, we should come down with a policy that incorporates 5, 10, 15, 20, and how this town can move towards more renewable energy sources. I think we've talked about land in the town for solar cells, and Ed has always been very protective of the aquifer around the well. And, you know, it was always sort of a discussion, what could we do with the field there? Could we put solar panels down there that would not bother the town well? That would be safe for the town well for energy production. I think Belchertown just went through a process to put in some solar cells. Were you involved with that? with Belchertown?
Not their project. West Springfields, I did Agawams, I did Long Meadows.
You did the ones in Agawam on 57 there?
No, it actually, that was Citizens Energy. We built, the developer I was involved with, we built a 22-acre farm up in Tolland,
Okay.
and then they're taking all the power off of that.
In Boston and in around Natick and stuff, they're putting them right on the side of the Mass Pike.
Yeah, in Agawam too, and the Rotary at 57.
Yeah.
Amoresco's
I
doing
just can't
that.
imagine a car going off the road and just plunk, 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 hitting a bunch
Yeah,
of holes. But I think as a board, we should, I don't know if we have an energy committee, we should definitely sit down with finance and capital and put together some way to develop an energy plan for the town to move away from fossil fuels.
Now, on the solar, we can basically put it up and the energy credits will pay for the installation and we'll get some revenues back, correct? If we do it properly, have enough land to do it?
Yeah, it all depends if you have town land or private land, you know, and developers I work with, we look at both. So town land, you know, you have to go out for RFP, and so you look to structure the land lease and the pilots. You know, a lot of developers don't like to do tax assessed value because it's too unpredictable and the banks don't like it and the equity investors don't like it. So I'm doing one right now with the town of Granby. We're going to look at 65 acres, develop 30 of it. It could bring in, you know, anywhere from $60,000 to $90,000 a year in taxes for the town with no drain on services. I mean, other than if there's a lightning strike, the fire department's got to go out.
Right.
Outside of that, nobody even knows it's there. And I like to build
Also-
projects that are hidden, nobody sees them,
Yeah.
so neighbors really can't complain about it, which, you know, I wouldn't like it if I wasn't in the industry. I like solar, I like wind, but other people might not have the same views as me.
But how about the cost of electricity to the town? Would that decrease the cost?
Absolutely. So actually, if we're looking at a project up in Deerfield, East Hampton wants the credits, West Springfield Housing Authority, I just met with, wants the credits. So if you save 20% on that, your usage, you could probably save another $10,000 a year. And not in the solar projects in Deerfield. So you don't even see the solar project. You
Right.
get the net metering credits off of it.
So I think we should put a committee together and have them look at these options sooner than later.
Well, I mean, we did have a committee several, well, probably up to 3 years ago. We evaluated a lot of sites. And the landfill was always, I thought, going to be an operation. But it's only 4 acres of exposed land, and it's got a pitch to it. So you had to cut back another 40 acres of trees to keep the sun, to get the sun in there on an optimum basis. And we didn't own all of that. You got the golf course, you got private houses around there. It wasn't going to pay for itself.
No.
And that was a big thing. We talked about putting them on all these roofs in town. Well, it wasn't enough.
Then you get the warranties of the roofs and
Right.
leaking issues and whose responsibility for it, and you got finger pointing.
Right.
so I
We
think
don't
that,
have any, the problem is we don't have any large acre of flat land that doesn't have some kind of a restriction on it.
That's what I was asking about the well, 'cause that's like.
The well, I mean, the biggest problem there is all that property was bought with state funding for land acquisition protection. In other words, to protect the water supply.
Right.
So I think we can have that conversation when we create an energy committee that you gentlemen seem so excited to be a part of. So at the at the moment, we have a motion and a second to move forward. Is there any other discussion directly related to that?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you so much
And
for
I'm more than
coming
happy to
in.
help out. I sat on the Agawam Energy Committee. I recused myself because I brought a solar project to them, but more than happy to help out. I wouldn't charge for it.
Very good.
So-
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Very enlightening. Sorry, I had to say that.
It's all right.
Mrs. Wong.
Acres are behind where the new safety complex is gonna go.
I don't know, but I don't think they're all ours anyway.
Yeah, they're not. We had to buy some land there.
For those of you following the agenda, I'm going to move to the ECAT renewal, so Kathy from ECAT can come in and go home. Kathy's here to present.
At least half an hour, then I won't have to put the kids to bed.
Okay. Oh, you need a half an hour.
No, no.
I understand your dilemma,
I just need to
100%.
delay my arrival.
What?
Excuse me, Randall, you had a question? About kids?
Hoping that one of us would be able to leave to get Caleb to bed school night.
Where are you on here?
She was 5 to 4, but
I'll make a motion Randall can leave early.
I can move ahead until, oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Go ahead, Kathy.
So we're just coming up on a time now where last year in April, we signed a one-year contract, and that contract is now up for renewal. So I think to move, you know what? I think to move forward, we could either set a time to come into executive session and negotiate a contract with East Hampton Media, or we could talk about it now. What is the board's preference?
Did we talk about it in executive session last year?
No.
Negotiate.
Oh,
But there's no competition, that's the only thing I would say. You should do negotiations when you're trying to, you worry about a third person being involved.
Yeah, whatever
There's
is
no one else
is
involved,
most
it's
proper.
just-
So we had a 6-month review, and we passed the 6-month review. We hired Mr. Paul Fish, who's been our Southampton coordinator and doing a great job for the last year. I haven't heard a lot of feedback from the select board itself about the services that you guys are receiving, but I'm assuming that it's up to par.
it's funny that you say that. Well, I do have a question. So some of the feedback I get from the viewers at home is that if now, the way we are, if you're not standing right there, you can't hear anything. So I'm wondering if we can get some microphones that could be passed
You can get
around.
anything you want, because we actually don't administer that part. You guys have money in your coffers, so all you got to do is talk to Heather about it, and she can buy stuff. So, yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, yes.
There is another issue when people are watching at home, is that they can't, unless people each have their own microphone and directly lean into it, they can't hear it.
Right.
So I would suggest if you're in the market of getting a microphone, you get
Two more of these.
And that when they're there, that people speak into them.
That's the most important part, is that you have to use the microphone that, I mean, and it's not, I'm not saying that to be facetious, but for example, the East Hampton City Council, it took them a while to get used to it, and now they're used to it. You know, where I'm from, the Montague Select Board, it took them a while to get used to it, and now they're used to it.
I think there's just the thought that if you're near it, you can be heard, but
Well, you know
apparently
what we
that's
could
not
do?
the case.
We could come in some evening and do a workshop with the select board about what
That might be
produces the best
helpful.
results. I'd be happy to do that in outreach.
Right.
The only major change in the contract, which isn't really a major change, is that what we decided last year was to cap the cash amount at $16,000 for a first-year trial. And then, you know, pending approval and moving forward, I'd like to ask for the full 1%.
How much is that?
I don't know what it is this year. Heather has those numbers.
What would-
Last year, it was like 18,000, and we asked for 16 to fund the position. This year, we're just asking for the percentage.
I have to wait for Heather to come back, I was just
Mm-hmm.
curious. What would be-
I will add just a couple of things that, so when you guys are about to enter a renewal year, because you have a 5-year contract, the contract will expire, and then you'll have to go, I don't know if you guys are going to form a cable advisory committee. If you choose to do that, I volunteered to advise the cable advisory committee, because we just finished our contract in East Hampton with Charter. We're all kind of in the same position with the Charter Comcast thing. Who knows what's going to happen, but I don't think, within the next 6 months, we're going to find out, because everything from the FCC has been pretty hush-hush, and it's also unusual for it to take this long. But you want to consider that if you don't spend your access money, then you put yourself in a weak bargaining position to ask for access money, because they're going to say, well, you didn't spend it, why would we give you more? So that's just something to consider moving forward, too.
When would you know what 1% of this year's budget would be?
It's not 1% of this year's budget, so just...
PEG access?
Yeah, it's the access budget, and just to give everybody a quick overview, so the cable company Charter, in this instance, negotiates with the town of Southampton to be able to acquire a license to sell cable in this town. And in exchange for that, they pay the town a franchise fee, which is usually a one-time payment. In addition to that, the town negotiates for public access funding. That funding is restricted by the contract to only go to cable-related expenditures, which limits it to access, so it can't be absorbed into the general fund. So what cable companies don't like to see, or what I've been reading, is that, towns, and there are a lot of towns that have like $800,000 in the bank and they're not doing anything with it. And the cable companies are just saying, well, why are we going to give you another 5% of our gross when you're not even spending what you have? So it can potentially put you in a weaker bargaining position when you go into that process.
I guess I would say, are these generally talked about in executive session in other places?
They are and they aren't. It depends. It goes from place to place. So in East Hampton, they have a mayor, so we don't have to do that. But in Montague, which also has a 3-person select board, they have a cable advisory committee, and usually those issues go there first, and then they're presented by the committee and the nonprofit board to the select board, and they work out something, which was actually on our agenda last night. But so they've voted to move forward with a contract, but they haven't negotiated the specific terms of the contract.
Okay,
So you could do that, too.
right. Which way would the
We
board
just
like
need to know if Mr. Paul has a job in a few weeks or not.
Well, I think Mr. Paul does a great job, so I'm hopeful that's still the case.
I guess Heather came in and I didn't get a chance to grab it. I was just curious what 1% is for a total.
Do you know what the 1% of what the access fee was this year? You guys probably either just about to receive it or just received it.
So the access fee just came in, it was right around 21 or 22,000.
Okay.
So,
Is that the total, so that would be the 1%?
no, that's the total.
Yeah, that's the 1%. 1% is the total.
1% is the
Yeah.
total, so yeah, okay.
So you're going from 16 to 22 to 21?
We'd like to, yeah, because we donated a lot of our resources last year to make the relationship work, and we'll continue to donate the resources to make the relationship work. But, it would be nice to be able to recoup some of the cost. So we pay out Paul, but we absorb the payroll taxes. Things like that. And we do that to bring access to Southampton, and I think it's been pretty good so far. I mean, we've gotten some pretty positive feedback from the community. You have a presence on Channel 191, there's always something on. We incorporated Southampton into our East Hampton Media website. You guys have your own page, we list meetings there too, so there's multiple places to find stuff. If you ever miss it on the broadcast, then you can always look at it. People can stay updated with issues. We also did a number of projects with the town, which falls under the government access, which probably saved the town a considerable amount of money because, well, I mean, I guess maybe it does and maybe it doesn't, because if you didn't make a video, you wouldn't have outlaid any money, but then it was a resource that was available to you, and, it seemed to work. People have commented a lot. I know the video about the public safety complex, has gotten like 500 views. But I'd have to, is that what you, 500 views? Just about. So it can be a really useful tool. Broadcast is a useful tool for disseminating government information, but beyond that, it's also a right that the citizens have. If they want to come down and make videos, they just can.
So it's a 30% increase.
Okay.
A question.
I'd like to have those numbers in front of me
Sure.
to digest before we can make any kind of decision.
So do you
Talk about
want
the PEG
to, would you
access
rather
fees.
have this conversation?
Talking about how much money is currently in the account?
Yeah,
We
Kevin,
have $54,000 as of last week. Sorry,
I
it
heard
works.
you well without that.
I know, but someone else might not have at home. So we had $54,000 as of last week, but we just got their annual amount they pay us of $21,000. So we currently will have 75,000 plus some change in the current PEG access account as of today.
What else can we use that account for?
PEG access.
Can we
So
buy
if you
new
want a
microphones?
microphone, we can get a microphone. All these microphones
Yeah.
and any other of the supplies in the room that pertain to public access came from PEG.
Okay.
So,
Mike?
one other possible use of PEG access funds too, as we've discussed, is we're in the process of renewing our cable contract. So one thing we can do is we might be able to actually utilize PEG access for related causes to pay for the legal cost of having a cable attorney actually help us negotiate with the cable company for a higher percentage and more benefits for the PEG access piece in itself.
So as an example, all of the cameras that were installed in this room, this entire room and the setup was paid for through the capital grant of the 5-year contract that you guys signed just about 5 years ago. And so the capital granting, which is a part of, tied directly into the franchise renewal, is a one-time payment, and that's just to go for capital expenditures, and you guys have depleted it. So now, in the next round of negotiations, you might want to negotiate for more capital money. I'd be happy to advise the board, gratis, because I feel like those purposes are the same. But, that might, okay, well, we've decided to change the room around, maybe we want to move these cameras, maybe we want to get better cameras. Maybe you want to get higher definition cameras. Maybe you want to upgrade the equipment, like most of the equipment here, because Southampton didn't really have the cash to purchase all new stuff, we just donated for use until this day came and we could start to come up with a more comprehensive long-term plan if you guys decided you want to move forward and allow the citizens here to have public access.
Charlie?
Only because I know we use the microphone.
Use the microphone.
Thank you.
We use the microphone. Public safety complex is going to have a conference room in it. If that moves forward, you may be looking to put cameras in there and having it all wired. It's cheaper to have them pay for it than us to pay for it.
Thank you.
And actually, we do that in East Hampton. We set up self-recording studios, and most of the committees in East Hampton record themselves, and then we post it online. So people can always watch the meetings. They meet at 3 o'clock. It's no problem. You can still see what was said, what the votes were. If you can't make it that night, it's no problem. You can watch it in 2 days.
I hear all the great things. The other thing is a 30% increase, that's all.
So I think maybe we need to have this conversation then in executive session when we all have had a chance to look
So,
at it and
yeah.
have some
And
conversations.
also, it may be a 30% increase, but I just want to comment that there really isn't another, this is a very unique situation. There aren't many other communities that have public access for $16,000 a year. There aren't many other nonprofit agencies that would be willing to take on the administration to give all the citizens here access. I mean, we as a nonprofit, even though we don't deal with profits, we operate at a loss to ensure that Southampton gets that service. So I guess I look at whatever the percentage increase, we're basically donating. ECAT, or East Hampton Media, has been donating to the town for a series of years, and the increase is still nominal when you look at the bigger picture. So not to minimize it, but just to address it.
Mr. Floyd?
Excuse me. Robert Floyd, 15 East Street. Speaking as town moderator, we had a really smooth annual town meeting last year for many reasons, I'm sure, good teamwork, but we did have the information meetings televised before the annual town meeting. People do get to see the annual and the special town meetings televised. Increases transparency, increases trust, and I believe that's good for all of us. I'd be totally in favor of renewing the contract.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I make a motion that Heather, we schedule a meeting to go into executive session so we can negotiate this agreement. We'll need information to support our decision on what we're looking for increases. Okay?
What are you looking for information when you say that?
Her proposals or whatever she has that she's looking for increases, and how that is going to be paid, and where it's going to come from, and what's going to leave us for balances. And the other thing I have a concern with, I'm not a fond believer of 5-year contracts because we can't adjust them. I'm more inclined to a 3-year contract. But that's the choice of the board, but that's my own feeling.
So we have a motion to schedule an executive session for this contract negotiation. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So when do you need a decision, I'm sorry?
So I think our contract expires, is it April 8th?
But the contract will stay, the old contract would stay,
Well, you would have to, I think do they have to vote to extend it for,
I think there was a line that there has to be an extension on it, otherwise, it's not like it's not like a union contract where if you
yeah.
pass the time to negotiate, it just
Well, can we
continues.
have her in next week on the 30th?
We don't have a meeting then, but we could.
I thought you did.
We can discuss later, but the need of the original meeting needed to be postponed.
Okay.
Can we
So-
just I'll make a motion to extend the current contract until end of April. That way we'll have time to just figure this out.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Just get us time.
Yeah, we just, well, I mean, even if we had a gap, it's just a legal issue, it's not, and we're not going to make an issue out of it, we're going to still deliver that service either way, so, but I think just to have all your i's dotted, t's crossed.
Thank you
Okay,
so much.
thanks. Have a nice evening.
You too. Okay, Kemps, we're going to have a joint meeting with the Finance Committee now. They've requested to speak with the Board of Selectmen regarding the above topics. Lots of topics.
So, we had a couple of things as the Finance Committee that we wanted to just address with you as the board, things that we've been discussing in our weekly meetings. So the first is the bylaw states that we're supposed to have the opportunity on any financial matter before a warrant is brought to town meeting to review it and to give our opinion on it. And we, as far as I've been on the committee, haven't received the warrants in a manner where we can do that. So in other words, we get them after they've already been posted, and so we can't render an opinion. And so we just want to once again reiterate that we would like to have the warrants before they're posted so that we can review them and issue our opinions on them as to whether or not they're a benefit to the town.
So I think in the past, and this is only my second year, I think those things are approved like very last minute. I'm hoping that's not going to be the case this year, but would it be okay with the Finance Committee if we scheduled a joint meeting, but you had them before to look at, and then we talk about at the same time? Or do you want them before that?
I think as long as we have sufficient time to review them and to discuss them so that we can give you an opinion. It's fine if it's at a joint
Well,
meeting.
I know what we did in the past was, there was a night where we would have a meeting, and you would be a joint meeting, and we review every single item.
That
before it
works.
went to the warrant.
As long as we can get a
And-
copy
and-
before we
Before
come
you
in
get
and meet
there.
with you.
What it saved was a lot of time, because it wasn't, you guys had questions, should I wait for our next meeting? But we were in the same room and resolved that and got it done.
Okay.
So that's one of the first issues, so,
Okay.
and I don't know, did anybody else have anything they wanted to say in relation to that? Okay. The second is that we have learned during this budget season that there doesn't seem to be anywhere a master list as far as what departments have for grants, revolving funds, enterprise funds, and contracts. And we know through conversations with Vicki at our weekly meetings that she has made requests to the departments for this information, but there doesn't seem to be anywhere where someone has all of this information put together. We thought we would bring that to your attention, and also, I don't know if it's something that you could send a notice from the select board to the department saying, if you are receiving grant money, could you please provide Vicki with that information? It's difficult for us when we receive information about transfers or when there's a position with a personnel change form. We don't always have the information in front of us as to whether or not it's funded. And I know we've had issues recently because, well, we have a grant for it. Well, we don't know that, and there's no place for us to get that information right now. So.
Which department was that?
It was the Council on Aging had a grant, and it wasn't anything that we were privy to. So when they submitted a PCF, well, we asked, how are you going to fund this? And because there wasn't anyone at the meeting to answer that question for us, it delayed the process for them. And we're not looking to delay the process for anybody. We just want a place where we can find the information. We think it's important, especially when we talk about transparency all the time. If the finance committee can't get their hands on that information, there's a problem with that.
Well, the question I have is it's just that any money has to go through the town account, whether it's a grant or not. So I don't understand why she doesn't have categorized as grants or receivables or stuff like that, because they can't cut a check for that grant without going through the accountant's office and then to the treasurer's office. So there's got to be some kind of an input that maybe they're not all together, they got to be collected, but you can't spend any money from a grant without it going to the accountant's office and that, because the state won't approve the reimbursement.
I know part of what
Feds
Vicki
won't either.
indicated to us was she may know that there's a grant for this amount of money, but it doesn't mean that the department head provided her with how long the grant is for, what it entails, and what she can and can't pay out of it. So I think that's what we're looking for. She knows that a grant exists, and she knows what's in the account, but not necessarily the terms of the grant, because people aren't providing her with the paperwork. And I think one of the biggest things she said was how long a grant is for. And that's information obviously she needs too. And she said she's made several requests to get that information, and not everybody's responding to her.
Would it make sense if there's a grant and it's funding, that she should get a copy of what the grant is?
That would make a lot of sense.
And keep it on file in her office, and then she'll have the terms. You won't have to hunt anybody down.
Well, I think that's
she's
what they're
asking people
right.
for.
That's what we're asking for,
Well,
because
if
we don't
she-
have that
if
right now.
She sees that come in, then she should pick up the phone and call,
Well,
Jennifer.
that's, I mean, I agree with you, but
Check some out.
she's looking for a list and terms and agreements and signed off. And what I'm recommending, based on what she's saying, is if Kevin sends a letter through Heather and the board stating to everybody, we want a list of all your grants, we want a copy of all the grants, we want the signed grants, and we want them in a file, and we want them updated with all the terms and material.
Is it
I
feasible?
know Randall has been doing that because I was doing that. And I know most departments do that, and they come in, if they're from the state or some state-funded agency, they're going to have a state or federal contract with it, which is a boilerplate, which we have to sign. So they should have all those terms on it, and how they get paid, and what they have to do in order to get paid, and those agreements should be categorized. So, Kevin, you understand what I'm saying? That a letter should go out to all, even committees, because committees get grants, and address it that they have, I would say, 3 or 4 weeks to get all this stuff in, so we can tally a list of all these grants.
Is it possible, I guess, maybe Kevin, to find out if Vicki could at least get a list of, where which grants she's paying things from, so that when stuff starts coming in, she can check off, I have all the information for these things, but I'm missing, this group over
She probably
here?
doesn't have the terms.
No, that's what I'm saying, but she has a list of, where things are being paid from. So if there's 10 grants, she needs to populate that information and at least make a list, and then when you send this letter out, it says, she can say, oh, right, I have the terms and conditions for 5 of them, but I'm missing these 5, and we need to chase them down.
How about you can't spend any money from a grant until you have the information in Vicki's office, because then you can sort of document the length of it. So if you hire somebody, like when the TARP money came out, we were really concerned about the regional hiring people with the TARP money. I think it was $500,000, hiring people to be put on salary with the TAP money. There was only going to be a one-time hit or surplus, but then from the next following year budgetary season, then we're going to have to pay for that person's salary. So I think when you look at this, you really have to have the terms up there, because a grant may be for a person to pay for the salary. Next thing you know, all of a sudden you've got somebody on the town salary, there's no grant supporting them. So I think before you spend the money, this would put a little damper on things, but it would get people to do it the right way. Say, Vicki can't spend the money unless she has A, B, C, and D that sort of give the particulars of where this money's coming from, how long is it going to be used for.
The only problem you might run into is, I think, in terms of the COA, is it the van driver that's paid from that grant money? So if he's already worked, you have to pay him, so you can't really stop.
Well, yeah.
And I just want to say, it wasn't that they hadn't supplied Vicki with information, it was
Right.
that we couldn't get a master list of the grants to have the knowledge to
So this is
know
the first step.
that
We need
that's
to
how
get
the
this
van driver
information
was
so
being
that the
paid.
finance
Because
committee-
I'm pretty sure they submitted everything to Vicki, but when
Right.
we asked her, we said, can we get a master list? And she said, I can tell you what's out there for grants, but I don't know the terms. I don't, and we can't render a decision or an opinion without that kind of information.
And we're subjected to audits on those grants too.
And so she needs
know,
it
I mean-
regardless.
So there's, not saying that there's inappropriate going on, but, you can only spend it for certain things,
Okay, so we'll get that letter out.
And it's true of not just the grants, but, we're also, like, we haven't been privy to information regarding revolving funds, enterprise funds, and, I mean, some of that comes down to revenue, things that we have no knowledge of whatsoever that we can't seem to get from anyone. And so it's not just the grants, but we keep talking about transparency and being accountable, but we can't seem to get our hands on the information that we're looking for. So it's not just the grants, it also includes those funds as well.
Did she give you the sense that they were reluctant to provide it?
I know, well, I know that it's just that we keep making the requests, and we're at a point where we don't know who to ask.
Yeah.
Because if you ask the department that, it's just, we're at a loss, that's why we're here, because we don't know who else to ask at this point to get the information.
So what,
Heather smooth that out for you? She's here, Monday through Friday, and she's here, Monday through Thursday, or whatever. Could she help you smooth out your request? Would it make it easier? to use
Sure.
this resource?
Sure, and that is why we're here.
I make a motion that Heather give you your hand.
second, oh,
And also, when she's going after these requests, put a time frame on it, and if it doesn't come back in a reasonable time frame, bring it back to us. 'Cause these
Well, I
folks-
thought at one point we were supposed to be bringing department heads in here to tell us updates too, but we haven't
Yeah,
seen that.
that's what I've got on my list right
Oh,
here.
good.
Because I think we've never done that.
can you get whatever you're not have and get it to Heather?
Sure.
And let's move forward from there.
Okay, we
Okay.
can do that.
Thank you.
And then the next is in regards to transfer forms and change of procedure. I don't know if you've seen it yet. We had made some notes in regards to the forms that come in front of us. I'm pretty sure that we are going to be coming off of it's the PCF, right?
PRF. Oh, PCF,
Not the
you're right.
requisition
Yeah, yeah,
form, the personnel change
Yeah,
form.
yeah, yeah.
That it's no longer going to require our approval when the new sets of what is it, the
PRF and PCF and.
So, but we did make some suggested changes for our knowledge when things come in from us to the other forms. So, and I believe we dropped that off to Heather. So if you could
We don't have
review-
them yet, but,
Okay, so if you guys could review that.
Why does the PCF change?
because there's some, well, go
Well,
ahead.
The PCF comes in front of us, and it's the department head saying that, this person is getting this, and we have no knowledge as to whether or not, they have the funds a lot of times to hire someone or replace someone. And so it just comes in front of us, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. And the DLS report said that we shouldn't be signing off on that it delays the process. In fact, it should go to Vicki instead of coming to us, because she can take a look at it and say, yes, you have the funds to hire this person. So that was why. And then lastly, we've also had some issues recently when we get requests from departments that people don't show up to explain them to us, and they don't always provide us with sufficient information. And so we send things back and we say, we need this or we need that. And I don't know if it's a policy we need to institute, or if it's something that you can strongly suggest to the departments, because we are just a committee without a lot of authority, that if you have a transfer, you either provide us with a written explanation of why you need this from us, or you show up, because we have nobody to ask, and then people are telling us we're delaying the process when all we want to do is make sure it's the best thing for the town. So I don't know what you prefer us to do, institute our own policy, or if you would rather do it.
Well, I mean, it's your committee. If you want to institute your own policy, and then we can go over it together and.
I think they're going to need support from us, I mean.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They can come out with the policy, and then we could vote to support them with their policy. So they'll know what they'll need to make a decision, so they should set the policy of the information that you need. And again, I hear what you say. You don't want to delay anything, but you want to have transparency. You want to be able to do things in the correct
Well,
manner.
Dave, if it's not important enough for them to show up for a transfer.
We seem to run into that a lot.
Why should they worry about it?
Even the
No,
PRFs
they-
that come through, when people want to hire somebody, they just put a form in a mailbox and nobody shows up. It doesn't, I mean, if you're going to ask for something, it seems like you should be in the room to say this is why and how. I mean, if you can't do that, then,
Or at least send a subordinate with the
Somebody.
information to address it. But, you know, it's, and I can't believe you're having a lot of problems with it, but I guess you are, but,
It's very rare.
yeah.
The last one who showed up, I think, was the Board of Health, who came and explained to us exactly why they wanted to do what they wanted to do. And it's really helpful for us to issue an opinion if there's someone there to ask the questions to.
right?
Well, you can't render a decision.
Exactly.
So I guess it would be great if you guys could come up with a policy that we could
And then submit
support.
it to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And I don't know if anyone else had an issue that they wanted to raise. The last thing was just that you had asked us to take a vote in regards to what Randall is here about, and since I have to leave, can I just tell you what we voted on in regards to the deficit spending?
Oh, yeah.
So for you needed a vote from us, and we did take a vote. Janet, who had to leave, we took it upstairs because I abstained from the vote, so we did vote in favor of it with my abstention.
Okay. Thank you. Does anybody else on the Finance Committee have anything they would like to add?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. Let's see.
Isn't there a page on the deficit spending?
Yes, but she has to leave, so one of them needs to go put Caleb to bed.
Where's it? It's in here, though. I thought I saw it.
I'm not sure about the answer to your question.
I read part of it.
I'm going to move to open time for the public while there's still some people in the room. No, Mr. Rancourt, would you mind coming to the microphone, my friend, until such time I can get you a handheld microphone?
We'll laugh.
Yes, sir.
I sat here through Jesse's talk about evaluation. And I know there's a few of you who are supervisors, and I've played the supervisor's game. I worked for the Bell system. You got 10, 12 people working for you, or 5 or 6 or 2. You're dealing with different personalities. And you expect them to evaluate, let's say this gentleman, or anybody else. When you hired him, or you hired someone else for other departments, they're the ones in charge. I was in charge. And I've had people tell me, you know, who put you in charge? The company did. And I've had other things said. And I wouldn't want those 10 or 12 people to evaluate me because I told them, take these service orders, you do this job. You spend a day running wire. All right? Or whatever it was. And you have to deal with these people. The whole thing is, who's the boss? The 10, 12 people who are going to evaluate the supervisor? I think it's ridiculous thinking of it that way.
Can I just ask
Because
one-
somebody is in charge, and this gentleman here, he's in charge of the town.
So let me just, for the purpose of conversation, and I don't disagree with what you're saying. However, I would like to know what you would suggest to the 5 of us who do this kind of in our spare time, you know, aside from 40-hour-a-week jobs. How do you suggest that we evaluate Randall? How do you suggest that we evaluate the fire chief and the job he does when he goes on an ambulance?
Well,
Or the
doesn't-
police chief?
yeah.
What is your suggestion to us other than to get input and to try?
Well, I think, what I really think is bad news goes downhill, and it arrives in the front of this, or arrived in front of my supervisor, very quickly.
I mean, I guess
If you're expecting workers to evaluate a supervisor, I think you're way off base. Out of 10 guys I had working for me, and normally I worked with these guys until I was set up as a supervisor, and it was only temporary. I could name one guy, I could get 8 hours out of him. The other 9 all went down from there. You know? In fact, there was a study by AT&T that if you had a person working for you for 8 hours a day, you're lucky you'll get 6 hours out of them. That's the average. And it was quite the study.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. I don't. I'm just wondering, in this situation, I mean, when I worked at Friendly's, I had 360 reviews from my employees, and it's eye-opening. It helps you to become a better manager. And so if we were in a position where we had a town manager, or we had somebody who actually had some authority over the jobs that those people were doing, then this would be a different discussion. But you're talking to a group of people who have really no interaction with those people until something bad happens. So how do we tell you when something good is happening?
You're not going to nip it in the bud anyway. You evaluate this gentleman from what you've heard, driving down the street, what he's done, and you can see all the work they've done, right? But to have a worker evaluate the supervisor, I think is ridiculous.
I guess we're going to find out what happens
Yeah.
in the next few months.
But I think you're going to find that everything is done or ordered from a worker, and if he's not happy with it, especially the guy who works, out of the 10 guys who work, you get some that hump, and you get some that don't. You get some that didn't. And in our respect, we had 6, 7, these guys would have 6, 7 service orders. Some would have 4, because that's all you got out of them, no matter what you do with them. And where I work, it's the same thing as working for the state. It was a godsend if you could get him moved out of your department.
I guess in my experience, it's a little different. That as an educator, as a teaching attending at Bay State, teaching medical students, interns, and residents, I got evaluated as the attending. It's just as much as I would evaluate the people I was supervising and teaching, my residents, interns, and medical students. They would fill out good teacher, on point, able to express things appropriately. I get evaluated, and it was just part of me learning how to be a better
Yeah, but you
teacher.
work with them every day.
Excuse me?
I'm saying to you, supervisor, and you've got 10 people under you, or 20 people under you, completely different thing. You come in at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you tell those 10 people, this is what you gotta do, or they already know. And out of that percent, you got a percentage that will go out and do the job, you don't have to say a word to them.
I can tell you right now, having worked in a shoe factory, worked in a mailroom, before I went to college, never mind going to college at 25, but I'm just saying, wherever you work, even as a physician, you're gonna have that, George.
Oh, you are. That's what I'm
Just,
saying.
does the
You're gonna
intern
have-
sleeping
you got
someplace?
10 people, you got 10 different personalities, all right? Period. And you got 1 or 2, or you got 20%, let's say, that do one hell of a job, and you wish you could give them more money. But that's not the case.
But what if
The
we?
case is, you can't, there's no way these people can evaluate somebody.
So I appreciate your comments, George. I thank you. I appreciate it, and I'm hopeful this goes in a positive direction, but if it doesn't, I'll let you know.
We'll put you on a committee to help develop, we'll put you on a committee to help develop a way.
I'll be a big help.
I'm going to move forward now, if there's no one else for open time for the public. I know what you're waiting for, Randall, but I'm going to just move through the fast things. Okay. Okay.
Run to the men's room.
Do you have the PCFs? You're going to go where?
Men's room?
Okay. I was just checking there's enough people to move forward here. We have a PCF for Eric Loico, a part-time police officer. He was previously an auxiliary officer. We approved the PCF for Eric to move from auxiliary to part-time. It was an oversight that we didn't appoint him simultaneously. The police department would like to have him start working shifts in April. So we need to appoint Eric Loico as a part-time officer. Is there a motion for that?
Make a motion to appoint Eric Michael as part-time police officer.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We need to appoint Sunya Palante to the Park Commission. Does that expire in May? There's no expiration on here.
I don't know how many years that appointment is, it's gonna be May something. I have to check with Janine to find out, we weren't sure which position she was filling. I think it's Gregory Max, so the question is when his.
And she is on the ballot, so I would assume, is there another opening? For the 1 year?
Okay.
So till May
I
at
would
the
say
election?
till May,
Okay.
yes.
So is there a motion to appoint Sunya Palante to the Park Commission?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We need to appoint Lisa Lauro to the Board of Health. Her term would expire on May 5th this year. We had originally had 2 interested parties in filling the vacancy. Both of those parties are running for the Board of Health in May because there are 2 seats open. The second candidate withdrew the request to fill the vacancy, but is still running in May. So at that point, the Board of Health will have 3 members and able to function as a full board after we appoint Lisa Lauro tonight. Is there a motion?
Make the motion.
Is there a second? Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mrs. O'Connell, would you like to speak to that, or is that what you were waiting to see what happened? Okay, very good. We have a PCF for Daniel Hurley, a reappointment to the fire department. He had left the department for military service and has returned. This was signed by the department head, the PQB, and the finance committee. Is there a motion to sign?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Today is the 24th. We have a one-day liquor license for the library trustees for a wine and malt on March 27th, and I would accept a motion to sign that pending a requirement that we need one from the ABCC.
Yeah, so there's, the only question we're having trouble getting the answer from ABCC right now is there's certain requirements that come up that trigger the need for a one-day liquor license. So far, the library's event is excluded from that need. For everything, the only question comes down to, does the fact that it's in a town public building trigger it automatically? But otherwise, it's a private event, they have a guest list, there's no cover charge to go in, there's no cash bar. So generally speaking, it is a private event, it does not require a one-day liquor license. The only question comes down to whether the use of the public building would trigger it. So we have an email out to the executive director. We don't charge the library generally anyway, so it's not a matter of revenue, it's just a matter of whether or not we have to fill out the paper.
So I would accept a motion to approve based on the answer we received from the pending request
For what? What's the request, real quick?
for a one-day liquor license at the library.
I make a motion. Actually, should I abstain because my wife's running that with the library trustees? I'll abstain.
So I would accept a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Ed?
Say aye. Okay.
Abstain.
Let's see. We have a conflict of interest disclosure from the tree warden. The tree warden was contacted by dispatch to alert him of a dying tree. Upon inspection, the tree warden came to the conclusion, with help of an outside company, that this tree needs to be removed and other branches need to be taken down. The tree abuts the property owned by his family, which under ethics rules is an apparent financial interest to have a relative that is an abutter to a matter under one's exclusive jurisdiction. Before us, we have a disclosure form disclosing the interest and asking the Board of Selectmen to allow the tree warden to proceed. Any objections?
I had a question to Heather, she was going to check it out. Heather, is this tree on town property or a town roadway?
It is on town property. It just abuts private property.
But it's a town tree.
Yes.
As long as it's a town tree.
Yep. Any other discussion around this?
No.
So do we just have to accept this disclosure? Is that what we need to do?
Make a motion to accept the disclosure.
Is any other
Second.
discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Did you say sign it under where it says Board of Selectmen? Right there. Okay. Okay. Then we're going to move on to Randall. Hi, Randall, thanks for waiting so patiently. Randall's here this evening to talk about 3 things. First, there's a lot of acronyms in all of this, so we're going to talk about Springfield Materials Recycling Facility, the MRF agreement for the transfer station. What did you call it?
Murph.
We're going to talk about the MRF.
Okay.
Ready, go.
So this is the facility we currently use for disposal of our recycling of our recyclable materials at the transfer station. This is just an extension of the contract with slightly different rate structure than current.
Do we need to be concerned about the slightly different rate structure?
I don't think so. Ed can speak more on this.
This is
He's
a state-owned
more history.
facility. It was set up in Springfield. It's part of, I think, 36 towns and cities that bring all their recyclables there, where there is no charge for dumping the recyclables there. At one point, we were getting as high as $40 a ton per ton that we dropped off there. The state does not run it physically. They hire Waste Management, I think right now is the facility that runs it. And it depends on how much profit there's derived from the recyclables. A contract every 3 years comes out with how much we're going to get per ton dropped. And right now, it's gone down quite a bit, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it's market rate, and one would assume that the more cities and towns, the more they increase their recycling efforts, the price is going to go down.
Okay.
I mean, I reviewed that today with him, and I agree with it.
So I would accept a motion to sign the MRF agreement.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
If you pass that down, I will sign it, or if you hand it over. Whoever has it.
Do you have the work agreement on you?
I have a copy, yes. You didn't bring one?
Isn't it in
You
here?
didn't email it to me from the other day.
Sure did.
Is it in here, though?
Yep.
I
I
thought
don't
it was
think
in
it-
here.
Is it in there?
I have a copy right here.
Which one do you want me to sign, a copy or a real one?
I think you should probably sign a real one.
No, it's not there.
I don't know if I have a, what do you mean by a real one?
Whichever one needs to be signed.
This one could probably be signed.
The one signature?
When are you gonna fix all the potholes?
Fix them every day for the last 2 weeks.
Specifically the one in front of Cumberland Farms. Just kidding.
I like
I'm up a creek.
College Highway State Road.
That near
They already
anybody
marked
right
out
now,
where they're
Dan?
gonna fix it, put white markers on it.
Last page.
It's like a game of dodging as the cars go down the road. Now, Randall, on Route 10, we don't touch those, right?
No, it's state.
This is just the supplemental information. in
I'll
case
tell you
guys
what,
have
how about
questions.
if you find it, I'll be here tomorrow afternoon, so as long as the board is
We'll
open.
vote to have this.
Make a motion to have the chair vote, let's sign the documents today.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll be here tomorrow afternoon between 1:30 and 2 o'clock. Next, we're going to talk about deficit spending, winter road wages. From Randall, may I add that the Finance Committee voted in support of winter roads deficit spending earlier at their meeting. So,
I humbly request that you take a vote for, what is it, emergency measures?
deficit spending. yeah.
Emergency deficit spending.
Is there a motion from the board?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any other discussion?
Where does the money come from at the end of the year? We have to reconcile it from our budget?
Yeah.
If I remember
take it off the
correctly.
top of next year.
Or if we have extra in the budget, we can reconcile it from other accounts like we normally do?
It's $400 million from the feds for the state, for the winter
Yeah.
Baker's release.
So there's a motion and a second to approve deficit spending. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there a letter I need to sign?
Yeah, there's one right there.
I can't sign it on the iPad. While we look for the letter, we're going to talk about the Department of Transportation contract with the town regarding Winter Recovery Assistant Program, also known as RAP, for reimbursable funding in the amount of $48,763.
All right, yeah, so the second year in a row, the state has released funds to help with winter cleanup. Eligible activities include patching of potholes, cracking, and other surface defects, including paving projects, repair and/or replacement of signage, guardrails, storm grates, or road striping or painting. Southampton has been allotted The same amount as last year, $48,763.
How far will that get you?
Well, last year, we did portions of East Street and Russellville Road, and it didn't get us very far, but we supplemented it with general highway funds. And I don't know if you are familiar with how much we paved on either of those roads, but we spent $48,000 of the pothole repair money, and I think approximately 35 to 40 more of general highway funds
All
to
right.
get what you got.
So about halfway, a little more.
Yeah, approximately.
Well, I thought you did quite a bit, because that was, you did overlay.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a big thing.
And we did shimming after that too with our forces.
Can I ask a quick question? There was an accident near my house in Russellville.
Yes.
The guardrail got racked.
Yep,
Who paid to fix that?
insurance.
The insurance did. We didn't have to pay for that.
No, we didn't.
Okay. And what about cleanup? There's like a battery kicking around and parts of, did we have to clean that up as a town?
Yeah, we do.
So, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I would accept a motion to sign the Department of Transportation contract for RAP.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do you want me to read those?
Yes,
Do you want to do it all as a one fell swoop, or do you want to do individual warrants?
I say individual so we don't miss any.
Righto. Madam Chair.
What is this? Where do I sign? Right here?
Thank you.
Thanks, Randall.
Thank you. Is there anything else?
Not
Hey,
today.
Randall, a quick question, nothing to do with this, but I was asking one of the other committees the other night, the sidewalks and everything going down here, is that still in the system for spring?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the timeline is, but I have a meeting April 17th with state DOT.
So it won't start before then?
I suspect not.
Okay.
What about the safe routes to school, too? Sorry. Go ahead,
I
Charlie.
think it is a safe routes to school.
It's the 10-foot wide sidewalks, right?
I believe so. There was
That's
two
different than that
sidewalks.
project there. There's two sidewalk projects.
Right. I thought the one on this end down by the gas station was supposed to be done in the fall, so I'm not sure what has been pushed off on that one.
Okay.
Or why.
I think they started, Randall, but there's 5 towns in that one contract.
Oh, okay, so it's whenever they
Not
get.
one town, one contract to South.
Right, Belchertown was
One
another.
contract with 5 towns.
One town got it done already, I heard, in the fall. I know Hadley's part of that contract, too.
What about the East Street project?
That has been pushed off once again by the DOT.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Randall. Madam Chair,
Ready?
I have here warrant PD 1537 in the amount of $40,000, $40,480.12.
Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Madam Chair, I have a payroll warrant in PD 15-23A in an amount of $204.49.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye. Madam Chair, I have payroll warrants 1523A in the amount of $910.80.
Is there a motion?
Make a motion.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Madam Chair, there is a payroll warrant 15-39A in the amount of $370.86.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Madam Chair, there is a payroll warrant in the PD 15-39 in the amount of $230,942.04.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Madam Chair, there is a warrant, bill warrant 15-38 in the amount of $109,511.13.
Is there a motion?
Make, second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
And that completes our warrants this evening.
I've got the minutes next when you're ready.
Okay. Then whenever you're ready, John. There's minutes to approve from a regular meeting on March 10th and 2 executive sessions on March 10th, number 3 and number 6. Can I have my paper in the drawer? No,
What do you mean? In the drawer.
I don't want the, I don't want the gavel.
It's the paper that says how to go into exec.
I'm ready,
I'll
John.
make a motion, we approve the 3 minutes as listed.
Second. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'm gonna go back to the top to the town administrator report. Heather has a report. She has a cough too, so we'll see how long this lasts.
How many pages is that?
Oh, that's a short list.
It is. I try to keep it very brief. So just a couple things. Budget update first and foremost. We've concluded most of our meetings with the departments. The only ones we have left are the transfer station and the water department, which we need to review their budgets, and they're just enterprise funds, so really it's just chatting about indirect costs and the like. The finance team scheduling meetings next week to begin the review of each individual budget. We're hoping to do the major budgets on Tuesday night with the finance committee in full attendance. That would be highway, police, fire, and also looking at the school budget.
What time is that at?
I imagine they start at 6, I think. There'll also be numerous decisions that will be coming up that need to be made at the conclusion of a review by the Board of Selectmen. Some things to think about. So these decisions are going to include things like decision of priorities. Is it more important to keep existing personnel, cut hours, continue increasing services? Another question is going to be funding. Is Prop 2.5 going to be something we're going to look for? Are we going to seek this? Are we not? Is it going to be for one item or a group of items? For union and non-union raises or pay increases, the question is, are we going to take the funds from the general budget or within each individual budget? Are we going to be restricting some budget items, or are we going to be centralizing some costs? It would be advisable to set up a special meeting just to discuss the budget. So if we can have a date somewhere after the next meeting, April 7th, where the Board of Selectmen meets with the Finance Committee and the Capital Improvement Committee, and the rest of the finance team is present, we can present at that point where we are with the budget, what our recommendations have become, and where we're really looking for numbers. I'm hoping to have a couple different presentations for the Board of Selectmen that night, so they include, if we choose option A, this is what it looks like, option B, option C, option D, what have you.
So can I say that list of things that you just asked us to consider, could you email?
I will happily email it.
Like bulleted, and so that we know what we're getting into? And did you have a date in mind? Because I'm just looking, and we're in April, and so I don't want to be having that meeting on April 21st or 28th.
I imagine April 9th is a Thursday.
Yeah.
Perhaps that Thursday would be good. I know it generally works for Capital Improvement Committee, and I think most people for Finance Committee are generally available at night.
So as long as the PQB doesn't mind that I don't go to their meeting, I would happily go to that
So
meeting.
you're talking about April 9th?
April 9th, yes.
The joint meeting.
A joint
A
meeting.
joint meeting, Capital Improvement Committee, Finance Committee, or Finance Committee in this, yes.
Thursday.
Fine with me.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and get everybody else
Is there
on
a
the same-
time that everyone
I
prefers?
mean, I think night
6:30.
6:30 works well.
6:30, okay?
I would say you want it earlier rather than later.
How about 6?
And I'm not envisioning this meeting to be one of public comment. I'm thinking once the board, Capital Improvement, Finance Committee come to a realization of where they're going forward with the budget this year, that then they'd want to set up a separate meeting for the Board of Selectmen to hear any comments from the public.
Yeah.
So you're starting at 6 for this meeting?
6 o'clock.
Okay.
That's fine, on the
Send an
9th.
email out to confirm that?
Yes, I will.
Thanks.
The next thing I have down here is annual town reports. So we've got pretty much everyone's annual town report. It's taken a while sometimes. I think the copy of it's passing around somewhere on the table there. This year we did a little bit different, and everything is formatted the same. As of right now, it's 96 pages. It's going to be a little bit more. I'm hoping at the end of the packet to actually put the permitting guide that was created, I think, around 2011, give or take. We updated most of the information for all the different departments that actually have fee schedules, any permits they offer, and it actually gives residents the information right there of where to get things. Once we get all that information, there's also, every Board of Selectmen currently has in their yellow folder a copy of the Selectmen's report for this year, which is mostly numbers and some of the other details, if there's anything that the board would like to amend on that, or if anything in general, and I'm happy to email the current town report out to everyone to just review. Before anything actually made it into the packet, I proofread it a couple times and did some formatting to just make it all lined up. Any questions on the annual town report?
Is it possible to get pictures to go with that first page?
Yep, working on it.
Okay.
Open
Not
meeting.
my picture, in case you were wondering.
We're going to put Liz's on the cover. Open meeting law. So on Saturday, I went to Senator Rosenberg's meeting in Northampton. There were a lot of town representatives there. I'm going to draw a blank at the moment, but let's see. It was myself, Charlie Kanicki, Gary Swanson, Geraldine Swanson, CPA, help me. Virginia A. Hart. This cold is killing my ability to come up with names. I'm trying to think if I saw anyone else there, but I think that was the majority of folks who, and, I feel bad. I'm not going to remember her name. A woman from the Housing Authority also was there.
Jenica.
Nope.
No.
You have to keep going, but that's okay.
That's the only one.
So anyway, the point of the meeting, they went over a bunch of different things. The major section they did was open meeting law. They talked about the open meeting law in the newspaper. I believe it was Monday's paper that they covered it quite a bit, and people had a lot of complaints about it. But some things that are interesting that they brought up there, and just to refresh everyone's memory, one thing folks have asked about time to time is virtual participation. And that is something that they do allow under the open meeting law. However, the executive authority of the town, in this case the Board of Selectmen, would have to authorize it. And you can have specific provisions of when it can come into play, what have you. But generally, if you say yes to all committees, boards, commissions. What does that really mean? Well, it means that if there's already a quorum present of a board, committee, or commission, an additional person can participate virtually, provided you have the right equipment to do so. See, they have to be heard, and they have to be able to hear everyone here. And then there's only certain parameters or certain times when this can happen. So if they're geographically distant, if the person has an illness, and there's a few other examples, but generally they can't actually be here. So it can't be like, oh, I'm just too lazy to come in tonight, or, I'd rather catch this on TV and not have to make it too close. But generally, once it is, and if it is approved by the Board of Selectmen, the executive authority in town, then each chair of each board, committee, and commission would have the authority to accept or not accept. So if John was out in California on business, Liz, being the chair, would be able to say, I don't know if that's geographically distant, or, I don't know if I want to grant that exception. If she does, that's great. He can vote fully. He can participate fully in the conversation. But again, the important thing to keep in mind is the quorum has to already be present without his participation virtually. So that was a major thing that came out of that. Just some other things, generally good to know. I think we post pretty much everything on our meetings now, and I believe online using mytowngovernment.org, or .org, actually provides the ability to say the time things were posted. One thing they said, again, they reiterated, and we've talked about this before, is that it's important when you post the agenda that you say anything the chair reasonably expects to come up for discussion. Sometimes things happen that you can't expect. You can update the agenda after it's already been posted to give public as much notice as you can. And if something does need to come up at the meeting because It just came up this morning, it's immediate, we have to decide, we have to talk about what have you. It can, they just don't recommend voting on it right away.
Okay.
So, that's the major pieces of that. And other than that, we're still working on some of the policy revisions for the next couple of weeks, and we're talking about Robert's rules and other possibilities for order in the board.
Did we find out if anyone was willing to sponsor a Meet the Candidates night now that we know who all the candidates are?
I spoke with the Democratic Committee again today. They sent out an email to the Republican Committee to see if they're interested in doing so. They're working on going back and forth with the Republican Committee. Democratic Committee is definitely interested in holding the event. The question is whether or not it will be co-sponsored by both, and that's their goal. As of right now, I think their forward direction is to set a date and continue at that point working with the Republican Committee, but they're on top of it.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you very much. Our next Board of Selectmen meeting is on April 7th, and then again on the 21st. The annual town election is on May 4th from 12 to 8, and the annual town meeting is on May 19th at 7 o'clock at the Norris Cafeteria. At this point, what? Did I miss something? Thank you, Mrs. Walunas. So, we're going to move back to 4.1. Hopefully, it's a quick conversation. The Town Administrator's Office has touched base with the other departments to compile a spreadsheet of who has current cell phone plans, the plans they have, and the cost. They have also compared the current cost to potential.
So going back to this is an issue that kept coming up, and it's up again because it's at the point where the water department needs to make a decision on what they're going to do for a cell phone. Most of the departments only, you have a copy of a chart in your yellow folder, I believe. Most of the departments only really need a basic phone, those who do have cell phones. The police department used to have cell phones, but they gave those up in November due to budget cuts. They do currently still have Wi-Fi plans for their cruisers. So that is something that we can look at getting a cost for Verizon. Otherwise, you have the details out below. I'm actually going to turn over to Kevin because he put this together for us this evening, so he might be able to give you more of what we're looking at.
So the top chart is a comparison of every phone, every plan that the town currently pays for, and the price. The bottom one is based on the current quotes we have from Verizon. We haven't had a quote on the Wi-Fi yet, so that was just sort of shopping. This is the price that I would pay if I went in and purchased that for myself, so it might change a little bit. Basically, to get everything that we were looking for, we're looking at a $9 increase, and the benefit here is that it consolidates the billing into one bill versus paying 4 or 5 separate ones.
$9 per phone and $9 overall.
$9 overall per month.
So instead of this coming out of each individual department's budget, is it coming out of somewhere else?
I think we can still probably keep it from each individual's budget. I mean, there's a few different options looking forward to next fiscal. And one of the things I had mentioned before with budgeting is the possibility of consolidating certain things like all Wi-Fi in one bill or for one account to pay instead of, right now I pay 3 Wi-Fi or 3 internet bills and I don't pay the other 3. So it's kind of a question of consistency. So this would give us the possibility that we could actually move forward and say, okay, all cell phones are going to come out of one cellular line. Or even if they were separated, I mean, we could do what we do now with a lot of things and bill each of the individual departments, or essentially you send it up to Vicki and she credits each like we used to do with HCOG for the electricity.
Okay. So there's only 11 phones. That's it?
Whatever Kevin
9
has there,
phones and
yes.
2 Wi-Fi.
Kevin, would this be a government account?
Yes.
Do you need any action from us about this?
Just a decision on the board if they wish to pursue moving this direction. I think there's 1 or 2 forms we need to sign overall, and then it just goes to the decision of the, talking with the different department heads to get them set up on the phones. They can transfer over their phone numbers and everything. The wire department would have a higher bill because they want a smartphone and they want a smart chip on it.
Why?
Because it was explained to me that they need to be able to do things on site. So that was one of the things that they had asked for, but that comes out of their budget.
Okay.
So,
I have one question. The fire, They have 3 cell phones?
Yep, they have one for each deputy and one for the fire chief.
Don't they usually communicate by radio?
Perhaps, but I can't explain why, who has a cell phone and who doesn't have a cell phone. I believe what happened is folks had their personal phone lines transferred over to these phones, and the town picked up the cost.
Because one of the things that happened when I first got on the board in '05 is that I used to get the phone bills with the numbers that they were calling, and we don't see that anymore. We just see the bill. And I think if you really want to sort of contain costs, you want to make sure that the phones are being used appropriately.
Well, I was just going to say, are you telling me that each deputy has one phone they use for their personal and their professional? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Well,
Yes.
actually, that's a common thing, where you, instead of paying for the whole phone, you just pay an amount towards their personal phone and it's used for both.
This looks like it's the whole phone, though.
Right.
Well, it says $14.76. If that's the basic cost, that's nothing.
But I'm just saying, but
Well, that's not, even- I mean.
I guess I'm just finding, not that I dislike, I'm just find it hard to believe that somebody's got a flip phone for their own personal use nowadays. I mean, everybody's got a smartphone and they're sliding and they're doing all that stuff, so I can't imagine that.
There's smartphones in the fire department.
For $14 a month?
No, I don't,
Can't be.
They said that they had basic phones. Basically, what it breaks down to is each phone individually, it breaks down to the $14.76 a month, but then there's the cost of the plan built into that. So in addition, for the 3 phones, they're paying $54.80.
So $14.76 plus $14.76 plus $14.76 plus $54.80.
So essentially, you're paying for a plan, and then you're paying individually for each line, for line access.
So then I guess I would go back to why aren't we corresponding through radio?
Radio has a limited,
it has better range
Doesn't have the
than,
range.
better
Yeah.
range than the cell phone. Come to my house and try to use the cell phone.
Well, Verizon is terrible down by you.
AT&T's terrible down by me. But
If
the
you're going to
radio
make
will
the
work.
policy that the fire department gets to use the same phone for their personal use as well as their professional, don't you think that that should be the same for everybody else?
we need a policy. We just went through this.
that
with-
was how this discussion initially got started, was whether or not we would reimburse departments who currently have 2 phones, one on the right hip for private, one on the left hip for business. Question is, do you want to reimburse them part of their private so they don't have to have 2 phones going on each hip?
At my company, we give if someone puts in for it, because we all have smartphones, that they can get a stipend a month, depending if they're using it. And way my business is structured with secure HIPAA texting and stuff, everybody has to have a smartphone. This is how my company works. But I just don't know if we're paying $100 a month just for the fire department, for cell phones.
We
And
can,
that's $100 a month.
Can't they share, like, can't the deputies share a phone? Like, I understand the chief, but can't there be one phone? So if you're on duty that day, you have the phone, and then you leave the phone in the office, and the next person comes in and they use the phone for the day?
These folks are on call all the time.
Radio. They all used to walk around with radios when I first started.
And one of the issues I have is if it's their personal phone, that's not public information, or if it's a city or a town phone, that's all
If we're
public
paying
information.
for it, all the data on there is ours, isn't it?
No, you're just giving them a stipend.
You give them a stipend, but if it's your phone, a government phone, that whole thing is open for you.
Right. That's why a lot of people don't like
So, I
government.
mean, anyone can do a public records request for all these phones.
Correct.
If they're public phones, but if they're your personal phones,
But we're paying
But we're
for it.
paying for it, so it's ours.
you're giving them a stipend. That's what you're doing.
No, we're paying for the plan.
Paying for the phone.
Oh, okay, so this is what that is.
Yeah, so we're paying for the plan and the phone. So everything that's on
Everything
those
on there is
phones
public records.
is public records.
Yeah.
All the texting that goes on that.
Everything.
All the emails that are on that.
Personal or
Everything
business.
that's on there
Absolutely.
is public.
And they shouldn't be erasing any of it.
Aren't they going through that right now with Ms. Clinton?
With what?
With Hillary Clinton and everything on hers?
I think this is something we need to invest.
You don't want to use a bad example
Maybe
here.
ask the fire chief, what is the purpose and why is this happening and when did it start and how did it start? And
Well, I had 5 phones that I paid for the highway department and a water department, which were for the superintendent, the 2 foremen, myself, and the building inspector. Okay?
And those
You
4 are
need
still
an
on here.
access.
5 of them,
Easy access
building
to each
inspector.
other for calls in the night, for emergency services, and stuff like that. But they weren't smartphones. They were,
Just a flip phone.
it was a phone where you could do texting if you had your glasses.
But now with a smartphone, lets you text and everything, and that's a more efficient way to converse.
But which is more efficient in the sense of cost-wise? You know, the police gave up their cell phones.
Yep.
If they can give up their cell phones.
Right.
Well, police aren't on call. They're always in a cruiser or in the station.
But, well, no, if there's a shooter or something like that, believe me, they all have radios at home.
Right, well, I mean, if there's a call at night, the dispatch isn't calling somebody's cell phone, they're calling a radio.
Right.
So what do you need the cell phone for?
So what they were doing with the
Talking
cell
police or you
phones.
talking-
Oh, the fire department.
What they were doing with the cell phones is they actually have a service that allows every radio call that comes in, they have a free service that converts it to a text. So people would get a text message on their phone, and they can click on it, and they hear what just went over the radio.
I guess I just need some more clarification maybe from a fire chief about what's going on. So we're not making wrong assumptions.
There's no other phones in the building, the assessors or anything like that?
No.
I believe the assessor has a phone,
Not on here?
but I don't have any details on it.
It's not on here. So this isn't all the cell phones then?
Board of
That-
Health has phones.
This is not all
Is
the...
that, Board of Health, is Board of Health in there?
Board of Health, they use a track phone with a calling card. So they pay for it, like, they pay for their own minutes, everything. But it's not part of a phone plan. They have their own track phone. This was based on what was submitted for payment for bills to the accountant. So if there's another phone
But if
from
it's in
another
their-
department,
But if it's in their budget and they're paying for it out of their budget a different way?
Then we should probably know about it if we're thinking about consolidating them.
I don't think the assessor's office currently has a phone. I think they had one and then they stopped payment on it. Because I think Kevin's right, when he went to the accountant's office, she verified who we're getting bills for currently.
I mean, if you're gonna pay for all these other phones and the Board of Health has one, then why wouldn't you include them?
Yeah. Did we ask the department heads if they had phones, all of them? I think we should just ask the
I
department.
believe we did.
I think,
But the assessor and the other ones, you're saying they have stuff.
Well, we know that the Board of Health does. The Board of Health, though, when they get grants for certain things, and they generally get the grants, and they use them for cell phone cards, so minutes, because it's a tangible item that they can actually buy at that moment, and they know they're gonna need.
there's nothing else they could spend the money on?
I'm providing the information that was provided to me on that piece. And then with the assessor's thing, I believe they had a phone up
This is-
into the fall as well, and then they discontinued.
It sounds like a couple were missing, because they're different types.
So I guess before we move forward with saying, let's go on with this plan, I think we have some questions for the fire chief and figure out if the Board of Assessors actually has a phone.
Well, I'm just thinking if the police could give up the cell phones, could the fire department do the same? Just trying to save money. If there's other ways to communicate.
Well, maybe ask the chief. Bring chief in next time.
Yep. So do you want,
I would make a motion to table this at this time.
is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Remember, we were talking about department head meetings on a regular quarterly basis? Can we put that on the agenda so that they rotate in on a quarterly basis?
We can, I just need to know when you want to do it, because the past two meetings, like right now, we're going into executive, and it's already 9 o'clock. So the question is, how would you like to do it? Do you want them all in at one? Do you want people to come in with a 5 to
Guess
10
here's what
minute
I-
update?
Well, here's what I'm going to say. I say this every year at the same time, well, every year being second year. But I think at this point, when we have budget conversations, it would be wise, and I know you're going to kill me when I say this, to meet every week until we get through the budget and until we get through these performance evaluations, and if we have to cancel it, we have to cancel it, and I know it's a lot of work to put the agenda together, but I think at this point, it's at least until we get through annual town meeting, we need to meet every week, because A, the meetings are long and we're rushing through things, and B, there's more stuff than we have time for.
Okay. Getting back to the department heads, the major ones, I think we talked about at least quarterly, and then the minor ones, if I can use that term, maybe twice a year, something like that?
Well, it'd be nice to know what's going on, so we can evaluate.
Right.
You know, we had this discussion at 360. How are we gonna find out anything unless we bring these
You
guys
want
in
them all
here?
quarterly?
Right.
I think, you know, the major ones is a must.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, and then, there's other ones that have issues and, or have grants and stuff like that we wanna talk about.
Yep,
Bring them
no,
in.
I'm fine with quarterly on all of them, if you are.
At least they have all boards committees meetings every 6 months or so.
Well, that's what Heather's doing now on a monthly basis.
But, you know, just
But
so.
with us.
With us, and it's like, it's more of like a brainstorming session to see what's going on in town and how people are feeling about the town and where we're going in the town and stuff like that, just sort of pulse of the town. It's a nice feedback session, and, you know, just to be able to ask questions back, hey, how's the cemetery commission? What's with the Johnson property? How's that moving forward for expansion of grave sites? How are you doing on that? Or how's the park doing? How are we doing for that flood area? I mean, so it's just a free-flowing forum to have that kind of a discussion, to see where everybody's on.
Would it be acceptable to schedule that, a quarterly meeting with everybody on May 12th, which gives the people who are
You
new?
know, no offense, but, you know, we've had those. You don't get the information you need, because you ask him to stand out, what's going with the highway department, what's going with the police, you got a 2-minute dissertation, that's it. But when you have a give and take where there's a good half hour, 45 minutes, like, what's going on in the police department? Is there anything we need to know
Well,
about?
you have to take time to do this,
You
you
know,
just can't.
yeah, I mean, I think it's important.
It-
We just talked about a 360 review because we don't have enough information. Well, we need to start collecting it.
Well, let me ask you a question. We're meeting every 2 weeks, and whether we meet every week or not is okay. But why don't we take one of those off weeks every quarter, just have department heads, nothing else? So we can spend 2 hours or 3 hours with them. And there's nothing else on the agenda, because that's what's gonna mess us up. You got 10 minutes for them, boom.
They'll bring pizza.
Pardon?
Pizza?
That's fine with me.
So
I'll buy the
that's
first
fine if
round.
that's what you want to, if that's what you want to do, it's okay.
Well, like Ed's saying, if you only give them 10 minutes or 15 minutes for 6 people to cram in there, you're not getting anything. We want real background information of what's going on.
Well, you need to know what their plans are for the next 12 months. I mean, what is,
How they're doing.
how they're doing, whether they see, you know, what are their fears, what are their real great concerns about the town, and they're all citizens, most of them are citizens in the town, obviously, and, you know, it'd be nice to get a feedback from them, and, you know, our 360, how the hell are we doing?
Discuss the budgets with them.
Yeah, I mean, how are we doing, are we representing them to the best of our ability, or do they feel like we're missing things and not paying attention to certain things? And it'd be nice to get that kind of feedback for people who are already volunteering to the town, you know, they're on the Parks Commission, or they're on the Cemetery Commission, they're involved in the town, and they have an idea of how we can do our job better.
So if you want to pick a day to do that, you are just running out of Tuesdays, even on the off weeks.
April
This
14th.
Finance meets on the 31st.
Oh, April 14th looks like it.
That's
April,
what I was gonna say. So if you want to schedule for April 14th, that gives people
29th.
enough time for
And
Heather
that's
to.
police, fire, and highway, or is there any other department I should be inviting?
2, the most, I think, to do justice. I don't think we should try to make it stack them and pack them.
police, fire, and highway, though, at least to me, those are the 3 main ones. It'd be nice if they heard each other.
Well, even the school, it'd be nice to bring the school in.
School would be great.
Regional to come in
Yeah,
sometime.
I think we need to bring the school in. Yeah.
Well, I would say you could invite them all, because chances are only 50% of them will show up.
Well, with the department heads, we need to say you need to be here. It's not an invite that comes with that.
I'd recommend the school another night, just because they have a lot of busy meetings, and I can set something up with them ahead of time. But
So-
generally, there's problems with getting here, where there's school committee meetings all over the month.
So the 3 majors?
On the 14th.
Yep. And do we want to bring somebody else in, like the town accountant or treasurer?
I guess you could invite both of them, since you're probably going to ask them about budget.
Yeah, exactly, so it all ties in.
Board of Health? Building inspector?
Is that all on, that's not all on the 14th, though, is it?
No.
Okay.
Yes, you would
The 5
invite,
of
Just
them.
police, fire, and highway on the
invite
14th.
Vicki and Donna, so that if a budget question comes up,
Okay.
they're there to answer it.
Right, and they give us a background, too.
So they should come prepared, you know.
Yep.
On the 14th, none of the school committees are meeting.
Not in Southampton, but it doesn't mean that Dr. Jurgensen isn't in Chesterfield, Goshen, Williamsburg, or somewhere else. Okay. Anybody else? At this point, did I miss anything, Mrs. Loomis? We're going to move into executive session. We're not going to return to open session. Per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, 4, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. To discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than the professional competence of an individual, or discuss the discipline or dismissal of, or complaints or charges against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual. To conduct strategy sessions in preparation for number 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. And that's it, by roll call vote.